Tadyatha, Gadangade, Parangade, Parasamgade, Bodhi, Svaha, Tadyatha, Parasamgade, Svaha, Avakoja, Eka, Edi, Beto, Rabda, Javajuja, Gehegoro, Javata, Mudita, Tumbaji, Rashiti, Ele, Sho, Lama, Dangomba, Jizve, Jambe, Yang Shangze, Kangal, Change, Ananda, Echini, Tongun, Jigin, Yeje, Doga, Levanze, Kanda, Sepe, Tona, Mare, Umara Bazana de Kadan de Jono Doba Tosama Gombe Shira Beda Jito Jordan Tamo Mudu Zezo Nyaga Jero Tabe Jinja Niki Chata Semni de zong chawa je de gerang da tamge du je je le je ma de de pong ma sa de no bo de je be ko ta sha de de no no je je lo de da den zen jam zo ran de me je ba ja na be mo zo wan de na mo la yi ke semje tamje dong de sanji kong ba ran bo ji ji ni jian to ba sha ti to ba sha de je dan be shu nian yang be ko ni ku na ya pa sen.
So for the sake of all sentient beings and with the wish to attain the precious state of Buddhahood, we can begin by having this good motivation to listen to the teaching.
다 드네 가르쳐 드는 식 사바 같이 봐 선장 동이 가르쳐 선 단단히 단기 칸도 동안 참아 비스 비슷한다 비스 비스 아마 같이 효인다.
So today, since there are a few new people, I will speak a little bit about the meaning of the verses that I recite in a condensed way.
당보데 안에 상지 초당 조지 초당 상주 받을 다음에 계속 다그 계속 집에 전에 졸업해서 상지 들어가 효성이 다그 당보 동상디 겸로당 생기 대기요.
So first of all, I recited the verse that says, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Community. By my practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain the state of the Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings.
다 당보디 겸로스도 몰라 상지 초당 조지선 상지스 상지 고죠 추스의 추고죠 조지 쇼서 게네 고죠 상지 초당 조지 쇼당 상주 받다는 겹세 테스 다비그다 고조선 될때 정식세 상지 마도 거다 엔다 에키랑서 겹스 주기 인세들에.
So the first verse that I recited is starting by saying, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha. So the Buddha is the precious jewel of the Buddha, and then to the Dharma, the precious jewel of the Dharma, and to the Sangha, the precious jewel of the Sangha. That's the first verse, the first line.
다 제가 기르마서 상주 받다는 겹스 제세 몰라 다 데이터비 고조선 되는 게 상지 마도 받 겹스 좀 인스다 데레스.
And I go for refuge to the Buddha, precious jewel of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until I attain the state of enlightenment. So taking refuge until attaining the state of complete enlightenment.
가르치서 상지 초당 조지 쇼나는 상주 받다는 겹스 제세 돈다 데리다.
So this is the meaning, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, until one attains the state of a complete Buddhahood.
다디 겸로세.
And this is the refuge.
다드네 다그 진소 기회 전에 졸업해서 상지 들어가 효서 측강치만 인기게 아는 얘기 지바 지바당 쓰름당 소바당 돈이당 삼天라서 루가 있으니 이게 가리 좀나 이게 왔들 때네 아는 셈시 탐지 동상지 고마 토와쇼 세다디 세기.
And then after comes the expansion of the mind, bodhicitta. So until I attain the state of Buddhahood, I will practice the practices of generosity, morality, concentration, generosity, morality, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. So practicing these practices, the six perfections, and so forth, until I attain the state of Buddhahood, expanding the mind.
다데스 드릭마서 안네 지바라서 루가 있은 거 개바 가르상나 이 개바들 때는 상지 토가 효성.
So whatever virtues I accumulate with body, speech, and mind, like generosity and so forth, may they become the cause for the state of complete enlightenment.
제다다 이게 셈기 있어야 돼.
And this is the expansion of the mind. Bodhicitta.
셈기 있을 말 셈기 있을 셈be 자실 다음에 돈다래.
Samkhya means to expand the mind, means to make the mind bigger.
남긴 가서 소소 그지 소소 내가 가르치나 개바 가르치나 소소 되기 유나체 간자치 여러 봐.
So usually whatever virtue we do, we always do for one's own sake, right?
인다 단다데 셈기에서 소소치데 많이 와. 소소 짐발라서 루가 있으면 개바 가르쳤나 디디 소소치 그시에데 많이 와. 셈시 탐식 동상지 공부해야지 디데 셈시 탐식 시에데 개바 죽도.
But right now, expansion of the mind, bodhicitta, is in order for the sake of all sentient beings, right? To attain state of Buddha, for the sake of all sentient beings.
데이터 셈기. 디지스 셈신 디지스 다 셈미히. 셈미히 일단 염내시야도 개체 못 찾아요.
And then after that, the four immeasurables. So the practice of the four immeasurables is important.
셈미히도 잠바셈에 데이터버 가르쳤으나 잠바셈에 인제셈에 가바셈에 당념셈에 어디 셈미히도 들었다.
The four immeasurables are the immeasurable of love, the immeasurable of compassion, the immeasurable of joy, and the immeasurable equanimity.
semche tamche ge che de chamba gomba de chamba cheme semche tamche ge che ingje gomba ingje cheme semche tamche ge che de gawa gomba de gawa cheme semche tamche ge che tangnyum gomba de tangnyum cheme esgyo
Developing love for the sake of all sentient beings is the immeasurable love. Developing compassion for the sake of all sentient beings is immeasurable compassion. Developing joy for the sake of all sentient beings is immeasurable joy. And developing equanimity for the sake of all sentient beings is immeasurable equanimity.
어때 바선 당긴게 이 제라 semche tamche deva dan deve ki tan demba chu semche tam dume ki tan 제발 혀 semche tam dume me deva dan ma jawa ji semche tam nirin cha dan ma deve tang ni 혀 se chi chi do ti semi hi nyam ni
So after the refuge bodhicitta, I recite these 4 lines. I say, may all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separate from the joy, which is always endowed with happiness. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, not seeing some close and others distant, free from hatred and attachment. So I recite these 4 lines. These are the 4 immeasurables.
다 semche tamche deva dan deve ki tan demba chu chik se de mola chamba cheme nyam ne
So may all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. Reciting that again and again, I think is the immeasurable love, the price.
제당 semche tamche ge ta chamba gom chamba cheme gom se de 가르 가르 gom 걸 세나 semche tamche deva dan deve ki tan demba chu semche tamche deva dan deve ki tan demba chu yang yang sam tang ko ya
So developing immeasurable love is thinking again and again. May all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. That's the price of immeasurable love.
다 되는 닝제 검세나 안에 닝제 체메 검세나 semche tamche 동의 기타 제바 혀 semche tamche 동의 기타 제바 혀 yang yang sam tang ko
And then the immeasurable compassion is wishing all sentient beings to be free from suffering and the cause of suffering, and thinking this again and again.
다 되네 가르쳐서 땅에 가바 체메 검세나 semche tamche deva dan deve ki tan 무자바 혀 직스다 semche tamche deva dan deve ki tan 무자바 혀 직스 yang yang de gomba 가바
Immeasurable joy is wishing all sentient beings not to be apart from happiness and the cause of happiness. Again and again, thinking may all sentient beings never be apart from happiness and the cause of happiness. This is immeasurable joy.
semche tamche deva dan deve ki tan 무자바 혀 직스 yang yang sam tang 가바 체메
Thinking again and again, may all sentient beings never be apart from happiness and the cause of happiness. This is immeasurable joy.
파트 제베 사프레 말베
Never be apart or never separate.
어디
Never be apart or never separate from happiness and the cause of happiness.
어디 semche tamche sam tang ya te 가바 체메
So thinking like that for the sake of all sentient beings is immeasurable joy.
가이세나 semche tamche deva dan deve ki go yorba
Because all sentient beings wish for happiness and the cause of happiness, right?
다 고바 있어서 tamche deva deve ki tan demba 혀 se chamba deva dan deve ki tan 무자바 혀 se 가바
So wishing for happiness and the cause of happiness. So the wish for them to never be apart from happiness and the cause of happiness is immeasurable joy. The wish for them to have happiness and its cause is like love.
다 되네 semche tamche 동의 게 고야 말바 근데 임바선도 집에 동의 고야 말 동의 게 비파 고야 말 근데 임바선 semche tamche 동의 게 tan 제바 혀 se 인제
And then all sentient beings do not wish for suffering and the cause of suffering, right? And so wishing all sentient beings to be free from suffering and its causes, this is a compassion, immeasurable compassion.
다 되네 가르잖아 semche tamche niring chadan ni tan 되네 땅념 니바 주세 땅념 체메
And then may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from hatred and attachment, seeing some close and others distant. This is immeasurable equanimity.
가이세서나 semche tamche 랑쇼라 차네 연쇼라 땅네 차단 거다 동인다 저 비에 와서다 대답이 차단 이네 안에 랑쇼라 녜니 때레베 차심게 연쇼라 배 안에 땅네 안텔레 컨트롤 차단 안 거다 동인 위에 와서다 안에 semche tamche 녜니 차단 이나 되게 땅님 주식세
The reason develop immeasurable equanimity is because all sentient beings are attached to one side and averse to the side of the enemy, like attached to one's friends and side, and averse to one's enemies, and creating anger. So, in order to be free from attachment and anger, developing immeasurable equanimity.
지금 나도 약보 삼단데 소소라 삼삼을 소소 셈나를 배 차심 차파 흉전부 용도 람상 셈상마 초로도 다가나 이 셈나를 배 컨트롤 되는 용도 람상 셈초도 셈 중케 차단인들이 차단이면은 셈 중케야마 제가 나도 셈상마 중케디 실로로 용케야마 난게 소 차단인들이 디 안에 셈제 상마 차단 셈 중케 와서다 에다비 차단이다 제네 아니요 교지스들이다.
So sometimes our mind is disturbed by attachment, and this creates a lot of suffering and problems for us. And sometimes our mind is disturbed by anger, and this also creates a lot of suffering and problems for us. And attachment and anger, they don't come from outside, but they come from inside, from our mind. And because attachment and anger create so much suffering, developing that wish for all sentient beings to be free from attachment and hatred, and to abide in equanimity.
Sometimes 당가서 가두이나 셈 쪽대야 차단이 쪽이었다.
So maybe not sometimes, maybe always, our mind is disturbed by attachment and hatred.
삼삼마다 연구면은 빼야버려.
If it only comes sometimes, it's really great.
거기서는 가서 가두이나 차단 셈 쪽대 가두이나 셈 쪽대야 가두이나 차단이 요다 되야.
Because our mind is always disturbed by attachment and hatred, then it shows that it's always there.
삼삼마다 셈 쪽면은 삼삼마다 차단 기름이 다 되야.
If the mind is only disturbed sometimes by attachment and hatred, so it shows it's only produced sometimes.
나도 가두이나 차단 셈 쪽대야. 거기서는 가두이나 zudatöre ja kadun tongde do tel teni I dongwar den kadun tongde son tel charging ge den central de do kadun yang samsang de es chik lamsang pe yang yi de mo tong de kadun se ma ke sha de do do na yu yi de mo de kadun na de ba song zang tel de den kadun cha dan ge de kadun cha dan ge de ba song kadun central de.
But for us, there's always the different appearances. There is the attractive objects which appear, the beautiful sights and sounds, smell, taste, and touch, which creates attachment in the mind. And there is also the unattractive sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch that create hatred in the mind. So our mind is always steered by attachment and hatred.
有些人说是些说给我的是相当美味搞画像用的。
Probably for us as sentient beings, the times in which attachment and hatred are not there are extremely rare.
然后他想把他凝结到东北你的时候工地有那地那个是这些中国要买的，马到先把他那的你通过工地那地那个用的马到下当了吧？那马到他忙了些的看对了游泳干的，但俺两个做我这些都不要买，下当用还高要买。
So maybe at the time that we develop love and compassion, bodhicitta, and thinking about emptiness, at that time maybe there's no attachment and hatred in our mind. And also when we are in deep sleep, so at the time of deep sleep, maybe we can say that there's no the manifest or the gross attachment and hatred. But at other times, as sentient beings, we always have attachment and hatred in our mind.
哦，那什么当的？那时候什么嘞？养的时候人家不同样都不要的，养的专业不过样都不要，养的这些不能这样都不要，养的这家也不样都不要，养的呗，说是什么基本样都不要的。哦，但但是咱们的搞是说呢，吃别个得当着要的。俺大概那一咱们呗，说这咱都像过样都不要嘛的，这都像那么样都不要嘛的，肉都像同样都不要嘛的，啊，人家都像牛样都不要嘛的，啊，什么东西样都不要嘛，那得了看对那呗这什么。 마대버신데 야다지 람상 거디 시기열데 일단 차단 세대용이 지금 차단 항상 배 차라만 보여 차단 라파라파도 순간도 데스키바 하고 거리 참도 순간도 춘기바 하고 야 말.
So if we think about it, we can see that at all times we have the wish to see beautiful sights, and we have the wish to hear nice sounds, and to smell nice smells, and to have nice tastes and nice objects of sensation, like tactile sensation. And also we don't wish to have unpleasant sights and to hear unpleasant sounds. We don't wish to smell unpleasant smells. We don't wish to taste unpleasant taste. We don't wish to have unpleasant tactile sensations. and we don't want bad thoughts and unpleasant, mental states to come to our mind. So if we think about whether it is gross or subtle, probably almost at all time we are having attachment, hatred in our mind.
어떤 들에 봐서도 나도 가두에나 배 단단히 참참 써야 된다. 배데 항상 참참마다 맨날 뺏기 버려요. 가두에나 나도 참참마도 참참 차단 기마도 가두에나 가서 기워야 돼. 되면 또 가두에나 샘프로 되기도 막막 시키나 네번도 해서는 yeah, I'm happy said 람상 랭자마도 진짜 때스 직sem나네. 람상 랭자 깔리 가고 싶어도 진짜마 샘프로 되게 차단 샘프로 이제 딱 되는.
So if we think about it, if we had only sometimes attachment and hatred, so that would be really great. But it's not the case. For us, it's almost always there, and we can know it because when someone asks, "How are you?" So we want to say, "I'm happy," but there's always this doubt in the mind, and this doubt, it shows that we are not completely happy, and this shows that there is attachment and hatred in the mind.
진짜 샘나는 차단이 와서 너 차단 샘 도바 막는 거 샹타동야. 예시게 담아서 샘나한테 용기가 맞지다. 랭자 카고 샹도 되리.
So having attachment, hatred in the mind, so one is not satisfied, and so it's difficult to give an answer how one is.
대시. 일단 뒤제라 강그 텐션 저반 좀 가보면 봐 제메 제범에 다음에 오마메 반도메 타데도메 조반이 시대면 서베상지만 담바데나 샤체로스도 몰라 안에 가르쳐서는 제 추남기 내당 안 텐션 저반 좀에 동 안에 딱식 다 차장당 봐 차대는 게 아니 추남 니룩배 치마치 힌제베 동원 쟁게데 동바 상기 좀 되리샤 아 될래야 그협신 차책이 인설만 있습니다.
And then I pay homage to the Gautama, who taught that anything which is dependent origination, it has no production and no cessation, has no coming and no going, is not inherently nihil and not inherently non-existent, is not in like one or different. So I prostrate to the Buddha, pay homage to the Buddha who showed dependent origination.
됐지. 아 되네 가르친 뒤제라 말씀 좀 해시라 바로지 마지막가 나게 뭐니 소소라는 시조에 맞춰서 자료임을 샤차를 초권적 안에 가르쳐서는 람데이나 샤세기야.
And then comes the homage to the truth of the past within the pressure of the Dharma. So paying homage to the truth of the past, and the verge of homage is saying, the verse of homage is saying, I pay homage to the mother of the Buddhas of the three times, which is unexpressed and like inconceivable with conception, the perfection of wisdom, which is expressed inconceivable by conceptual awareness, which is like which has no production, no cessation, as in the nature of space. It's also so the object of engagement of the primordial wisdom, that the self-cognizing primordial wisdom, so I prostrate to this mother of the Buddhas of the three times.
제가 다디 가르쳐서는 초권쇼스들 모든다 남데 이래와 다디 람그된 바르샤 람그된 베게 나네 초남 기를 무슨 또 된게네 내적 무슨 들었다 샤세기야.
So the precious jewel of the Dharma, it consists of two parts: the precious jewel of the Dharma, which is the true cessations, and the precious jewel of the Dharma, which is the true path. So right now we're paying homage to the true path, and within the true path, to the wisdom, the yogic direct perception, which directly realizes emptiness.
강의에서는 가르치는 창적이어서나 대답이고 배 내적 무슨 다음에 무슨 더 내적 무슨 될 때네 안에 배 녀도 봐봐 랑제 봐봐 백신 봐봐 차장 될 때네 대답이 내적 무슨 길이 개발 때네 안에 something 좀 봐서 말을 봐 사지 공부 톱네 소소소소 그다 라지온베 공부하는 사지 공부 참 토끼고 sonza 대답이 그 다음에 무슨 더 내적 무슨 뒤 안에 가르쳐서 될 때네 안에 배 랑제 봐봐 가서 또 봐봐 랑제 봐봐 장선 봐봐 안에 배 가르선 산지 파파 시가 된 다음에 무슨 더 히랍될 때는 용기가 sonza 됐다 다음에 무슨 더 히랍돼 마단 잡이샤네 아니 가르쳐서나 아니 잡이샤네 염들 샤셀로스.
So first I want to correct my previous translation. When I translated the verse, I said I proceed to the mother of the Buddhas of the three times. Is this the wrong translation? It should be the mother of the victorious ones of the three times, because the victorious ones are not only the Buddhas, but also the Arya hearers, and the Arya solitary realizers, and the Arya Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so it is the mother of all the victorious ones of the three times. Why? Because the perfection of wisdom, the wisdom that directly realizes the way things are, this is the mother of the Arya hearers, and this is the mother of the Arya solitary realizers, and it also is the mother of the Arya Bodhisattvas and Buddhas. So paying homage.
다가나 히탄다 되선 개비 염라 샤츠로세디 몰라 대답이 담이 무슨 도베 니저 무슨 들라데네 데비 상기 들라데네 상기 다데게 상기 들라데네 상자이긴바 마음과네 상기야 들라데네 상기만 이바선다 되선 그 상기 탐색장 안 담이 무슨 도베 히랍 들라데네 베 상기 때는 용비 와선다 안 이찬이야 되선 상기 탐색은 юм나 히데 담이 무슨 도베 히랍 되는 바선다 안 데이터 되선 개비 염라 샤츠로스.
And another way to understand the verse would be to think about the Buddhas of the three times, because the perfection of wisdom, wisdom that directly realizes selflessness, this wisdom is the mother of the Buddhas of the past, and it is the mother of the Buddhas of the present, and it is also the mother of the Buddhas of the future. And so being the mother of the Buddhas of the three times, that's another way to interpret the mother of the victorious ones of the three times.
Not exactly. 가르쳐서는 담에 무슨 또베 히랍 니저 무슨 담에 자주성 그세 담에 무슨 또베 히랍디 아니 염탄타바레스.
The wisdom that directly realizes selflessness and is held by bodhicitta is like a mother.
가르치는 데비 상진남 담에 또베 히랍디네 상기바레스.
And why? Because all the Buddhas of the past have attained the state of Buddhahood, depending on the wisdom of selflessness.
다테게 상기에서 담에 무슨 또베 히랍 공발디네 상기 힘바레스.
Also, the Buddhas of the present are attaining the state of Buddhahood, depending on the wisdom of selflessness.
제가 마음의 상기에서 담에 또베 히랍라디네 상기 야반 귤바레스.
And also, the Buddhas of the future will attain the state of Buddhahood, depending on the wisdom of selflessness.
제가 담에 무슨 또베 히랍데 공발디네 가르쳐서는 되선 그 상기 참아들디네 상기 예심바단 예심바단 야반 귤바인 바선다 담에 무슨 또베 히랍디 염탄타베잖아요. 가르쳐서는 담에 무슨 또베 히랍 이 되선 개비 염라 샤츠로스.
So since the wisdom of selflessness is that which has produced Buddhas, that which is producing Buddhas, and that which will produce Buddhas, one pays homage to the wisdom of selflessness.
데레인 바선다 맞아 가르쳐서는 대상 맞아 가르쳐서는 상기가 송테네 베나 히랍디 바로 심발에 염시히게 염진링 규선 염진링 세르말 염기바 염진 염디바선 콜로 바르바디 아니 염진링 규선 요래 염기바 염진와 염디바 가르치고 세서는 콜로 바르바디 상기가 송티게 안에 송티게 딱 추남기 내로 동반이 땡기 요래 동반이 땡 받달라 되네 돈 무슨 또 히랍 아니 용부여가 sonza 다들 가르쳐서는 상기가 송달라 염세면 다샤래.
So the teachings of the Buddha, they are called the mother or holy mother. For example, the perfection of wisdom. The perfection of wisdom in its different versions, the long, the middle, and the short, is called a mother. The reason it is called a mother is because it gives rise, it gives birth to Arya beings, to the hearers, the solitary realizers, and Arya bodhisattvas. And so that's why these teachings of the Buddha are called also a mother.
상기 가르쳐서는 동반이 발된 발체겐 콜로 바르베겐도 이바들라 북포트 중이요 연포트 중이.
In this middle and turning of the wheel of the Dharma, speaking about selflessness, so there are 12 great volumes to that.
텔레 디발라 뉴트포트 섬이요.
And in a more condensed way, there are 3 volumes.
제가 딱 포트 네 포트 가서 포트 중이들라 범스히베 김생 가르쳐서 텔라 안에 동반이 발된 야로 쇼로감 범이요 범.
나 약보 코마소나.
범 기바 되는 범스히게 가르쳐 포트 중이 시대와 되는 민 범라고 범.
His extensive presentation is also called the 100,000 verses.
어떤 범스데 직주야 동처 처치는 범라봐.
So 100,000 there we can, there is 1 and 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, and 10 times 10,000 will be 100,000.
제단 범시에 김생 가르쳐서나 동반이 받대는 배지가 효로 같은데 즉 즉이라 효로 가래와 근데 지 동반이 되는 배지 효로가 범식이건 범식.
So why is it called 100,000? Because there are 100,000 verses inside of the 12 great volumes. They consist of 100,000 verses.
나한테 가르쳐서 디스 텔레 듀바텔라 텔레 등이텔라 안에 포트 숨이요.
And then when it is subsumed a little bit, and when it is a little condensed, so there are 3 volumes.
디명라 니트라고 니트 포트 숨.
And this is called the 3 volumes of 20,000.
다데까지 니트 시에 김생 가르쳐나야 이 동반이 배 때야가 범대배 뒤네 뒤샤바텔라 안에 효로가 니트 효로가 층이요. 네 맞어 니트 지도.
And why is it called 20,000? Because in the middle, in like the medium presentation of perfection of wisdom, are 20,000 verses.
나한테 텔레 말 뒤샤바텔라 포트 찍이요. 게도 봐.
And then the more condensed is one great volume, and that great volume is called the 8,000.
다텔레 효로가 계통이요. 계통.
And in that there are 8,000 verses.
다텔레 듀바텔이 요래.
And then also it comes more condensed than that.
다텔레 뒤샤바데 히랍민 거래.
And when it is more condensed than that, it is the perfection of wisdom.
다텔레 뒤샤바데 이 훨씬 이게 지금 왔어야 돼.
And even more condensed than that is the one letter of the perfection of wisdom.
써야 되다.
The letter A.
디 훨씬 상마 듀바디가 되다. 이게 지금 훨씬 이게 지금 왔을 때.
So the entirety of perfection of wisdom in one letter is that.
다 돈다데 가르스나 쇼탐지 대진 저번 정황에 봤으나 써야 되게 랑싱이요 말이세. 랑싱 저가 깝자. 써야 되래요.
And the meaning is because all phenomena are dependent related to origination. That's why all phenomena are not inherently existent. So I is negating inherent existence.
써야 돼. 써야 돼.
So A means non-existent.
가야 메시기요 말이. 랑싱 메바.
But not that there ain't nothing at all. But there is no. But the meaning is that there is not inherent existence.
가이선 쇼참마 땡종레스.
Because all phenomena are dependent arising.
쇼참마 땡종이 봐서 땡종 많이 괜찮어 말이세 거다.
Because all phenomena are dependent arising, there is not a single phenomenon which is not dependent arising.
대대인 봐서 다 대답이 이제 가르쳐 마선쯤에 시라 바로시 마제만가 나게 뭐 소소라는 시조에만 뜻은 제가 염라 샹셀로서 어디 돈다 되네. 쇼타마 땡종이 봐서 쇼타마 랑싱이요 마이스테.
So this is the meaning of the verse that says, I pay homage to the mother of the Buddhas or the mother of the victorious ones of the 3 times, which is the perfection of wisdom, inexpressible, beyond conception, which is having no production, no cessation in the nature of space, and is the object of engagement, the object of meditation, of the primordial wisdom, or which has like recognizes as the self-completion.
제가 쇼탐치 랑심이가 무슨도 똥캔디 아는 가르쳐서나 다 염차비야래. 대르데네 안다 파과트서 두성상기 이바인 바선다 두성제베 염라 샹셀로스.
So this is the wisdom of selflessness, and the wisdom of selflessness it is the wisdom that knows directly the way all phenomena exist, and this wisdom that knows directly the way all phenomena exist is the mother of the Buddhas and the Aryabhins of the 3 types. So starting by prostrating, paying homage to that wisdom.
페나 가르쳐서 안에 페나 안에 말에는 표정과 나시 안에 두성상기 탐치 담이도 히랍되는 종교가 와서다 안 담이도 히랍될 염스히샤.
For example, like the children are coming depending on the mother. So also the wisdom of selflessness being like the origin of the Buddhas of the three times, is also the victorious ones, is also called a mother.
다 되네 가르티 제라 아니 가서 가르세나 때야 당가데 가데 파랑가데 파라삼가데 보데 소하스디 송가테레
And then comes the mantra Tadyatha gate gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Svaha.
다디 가르땡기 요르세소나 데이터비 쉬운남게 내로 동반이 곰발을 때네 아는 소람 절람 통람 곰람시네 여러데네 셈종배 아샤트지야 말르반 상지 고마 톱그레스 다디 땡기 요르
So what does it show? So it shows that depending on that wisdom of selflessness, one goes through the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of sin, the path of meditation, and abandoning all faults, attaining all good qualities, and the state of Buddha.
데레 바선 때야타세 데타테 실다 나도 가르신이야 나도 가르신 상지 톱그레스소나 당복 간저 가르잖아 쉬운남게 내블란 당복 토바지 바데 삼바지 토삼게 소람 레바시 다데네 쉬운남게 내로 도베 힐라손레 땡게디 톱디머 졸람시 다데네 힐라손레 땡게디나 된 돈이 무슨 도디머 통람시 다데 야네 곰디 나와데네 셈티 경 말르반 상지 거와선자 안데야타 가데가데 파랑가데 바상데 보데스 하스테리
So Tadyatha, it is like that, or like this is the way, this is the mode, this is how sins are. And what is the way, what is the mode? So first by developing that wisdom that realizes the way sins are, developing that wisdom first coming from listening and contemplation, and finally attaining that wisdom in meditation, in the coming together of come abide in special insight, when one is able to hold come abide in special insight, first of all with conceptual.
축자선 당복 가르쳐서 동반이나 토바당 삼바지 데르데네 전심 세베 동반이 토바 삼바지는 소람 다데네 힐라손레 땡게디 때네 돈이 돈시들 도비 졸람 다데네 돈이 힐라손레 땡게디 때 돈이 얼마도 산통 통람 대양의 양당의 곰비데네 곰람 다데르데네 셈좀 말레반 산지 코마 토바 바송자 대야당가데게 파랑가 셈 파르사문 보데소 하스
So first one develops bodhicitta, and together with that bodhicitta, also listening and contemplation about the wisdom of selflessness. And when one has the bodhicitta together with listening and contemplation about the wisdom of selflessness, one enters the path of accumulation. And then when one is able to develop a meditative stability, which is holding together both calm abiding and special insight, and realizes emptiness, with that unification, realizing emptiness in a conceptual manner. So that is the time that one enters the path of preparation. And then when one sees emptiness for the first time, the way one has never seen before, so this is the path of seeing. And then after that, with that very realization, again and again, is the path of meditation. And finally, by habituating again and again, one completely eradicates all the faults of the mind and attain all good qualities up to the, completely. And this is the path of normal learning. And this is expressed by the mantra, Tadyatha gate gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi Svaha.
보데서 단들레 마송 데르데네 셈팅 좀 바샤치야 말르반 상예디 보데소 하스
So when one abandons all the faults of the mind up to the very last one and attains all good qualities, this is Bodhisattva, the state of Buddhahood.
어다 텐데치는 상지 컴포 드버치바 담보라 상지세 담보는 상지와서 요 말에 담보 가지고 가르선 소소 제보지는 가지고 고백이 센치 텐데체게 안에 동반이 추남 니루 동반이란 담보 토와지 바드 삼바체 다 되는 곰안 데이터비 토상 곰스 시바되는 소람 졸람 통람 곰람시 엔데 셈데 경 말에 바는 상지 스타트리 로탄트리스
So the state of Buddhahood is not something that one has from the start. First, one needs to start by listening, contemplation, meditation, and depending on that, going through the path of accumulation and preparation, the path of sin, the path of meditation, abandoning all the faults, attaining all good qualities, and the state of Buddhahood.
데이터비 가르쳐서 다음에 그 동라 안에 토상 곰스 시바되네 네 셈팅 좀 바샤치야 말에 바는 상지 컴포 토피와 상자
So because it is the meditation of selflessness, that depending on that meditation, one abandons all the faults and attains all the qualities of mind.
데이터비 담에다가 히랍되는 진상 상승을 바시 장마다 독촉도
So the wisdom of selflessness, the meditation on the wisdom of selflessness, can reverse all the obstacles, the inner, outer, secret obstacle. It can reverse it. Can't it?
근데 맞아 그 동라자시 시바다 문제도 베기나 제바다 두 번째 다시 비교된 데렉션 때리다 에다비 그다음에 또 히랍 본발 때는 지난 상상 같이 참아 그 같이 참아 매바차 샤쇼스
Rinpocheran molam dina hako gime chisam pechina secret regole.
그래서 네 시바 교다 그 동라자시 시바다한테도 그 가르쳐서 지난 상상 비긴 같이 동자 저장 부터 가서 이제 참 매바 샤쇼스
The next prayer is saying, may so since the wisdom of selflessness is that which takes away the obstacles, the next prayer is saying, may all the obstacles, all the different obstacles and all the different sins which block the way, so may they all become non-existent, whether there are hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, may they all become non-existent.
문틴노 베기나 제바 당세도 너나 소소 그 투삼 검성 냠내 시야다 어떤 냠내 시야가 문틴위기 겐그 다시 신앙상승 때 참아 매바 샤쇼스
And may all the discordant conditions, the inner, outer, and secret, and may they all become non-existent by one's listening, contemplation, meditation on the wisdom of selflessness.
다가나기 다음에 또 히라 공부할 때네 안에 초저비야 토삼 검성 그네 배 된데기 겐상마 특히 포섬사가 쇼스
And also by meditating on the wisdom of selflessness, may all the positive, all the concordant conditions be developed.
대답이 너나 대답이 다음에 또 히라블 때네 안에 신앙상승 개념 빠지 시 다음에 또 히라블 때네 담배 초저비야 신앙상승 표현상마 대답이 다 자시베 템지디 용화 쇼스야
And so, in short, by the wisdom of selflessness, may all the conditions which are not good for practice, may all the inner, outer, secret conditions which are not good for practice become non-existent, and may all the conditions which are good for practice, for listening, contemplation, and meditation, may all these conditions increase more and more.
대답이 그 다음에 또 히라당 장수쌤이 냠도 람탑히 냠도 냠내 시발 때는 신앙상승 개념 빠지 매바 샤요 선자
And since it is the practice of the two together, the practice of the wisdom of selflessness together with bodhicitta and the method side of the path, since it is the two together which take away all the obstacles and all the sins which are not good for the practice.
제가 나도 라파이에다 탑 정도야 요마 히랍 정도 제가 엔디신 도파자야 돼 가래 람탑 힘이나 되네 대답이 다음에 또 히라당 장수쌤 이나 되네 신앙상승 개념 빠지 빠신 되게 참 이기는 저거 쇼스 남기 이거를 히랍님 보통 사실 엔디 제거 이제 될
So since it is the two together, so our right hand representing the method and our left hand representing the wisdom, and that's why we clap the two hands together, because this is to represent that we put together the wisdom of selflessness together with bodhicitta, and in order to take away all the obstructive conditions and so forth. And so later on, when we see people clapping like this in the end of the wisdom, the perfection of wisdom, this is the meaning.
라파이에 탑도 라파용 히랍 세요 말다 라파이에 히랍 탑 손동 세데 말때 하고야 시데 라파용 히랍 하고야 시데 말도 데 탑도 히랍 레스가 말다 탑도 히랍 하고야 시데
So it's not saying that the right hand is method. No, it's not saying that the left hand is wisdom and that the right hand is method, but that the left hand is like a representation of wisdom, and the right hand is a representation of method. And so representation means the left hand is in order to understand wisdom, the right hand in order to understand method, and clapping them together is to understand the two together.
제가 탑 글람 장십 그 셈당 히랍 글람 다음에 또 히랍 딩이 손도 제발 때는 지나서 개념 빠지 빠 시기요 와서다 때 하고야 시데 탑당 히랍 그 탑 손동 히랍 손동 세데 어디 하고야 시데 지금
So the left hand is representing the wisdom of selflessness, the right hand is representing the method of bodhicitta, and clapping the two hands together is representing the wisdom of selflessness and bodhicitta coming together.
지금 탑당 히랍이 얌도 탑당 히랍이 얌도 양네 좀발 때는 아니 지나 상상 다시 시트 부여티 하고야시다.
So this is in order to understand that when method and wisdom comes together again and again, this takes away all the obstacles, the inner, the outer, the secret obstacles, and this is the representation.
다디 제스 가르세 손나 간도다 간도 줄에 데이터 위람 타신 줄이 개발 쳐발라.
And then after that, in order for us to develop the path of the true method and wisdom in our continuum,
오 히랍 줄에 개발 쳐발라. 아니 그 망보 때문에 년에 다 해적시킨 다 망보 때문에 줄이 개그러와.
so for wisdom to be developed in the continuum, it depends on many conditions, like outer conditions, inner conditions, many conditions have to come together.
년에 해적시킨 다 가르베.
So we need the substantial causes and the cooperative conditions.
근데 년 대비 값을 인식하셔서 말이야. 인식은 년 그래. 간서는 내가 측가데 내가 희바 나 희야 내가 요마티나 다도 삽삽치 농긴자다 사바히야 망보여라. 어쨌든 다 어떤지인다 돈나 가르세는 히랍 줄이 개발 쳐발라. 그 망보 서두이샤는 년에 다 해적시킨 이는 그래스.
So to develop wisdom in the continuum, it takes many causes. But if we put the causes, kind of subsume them into two, so it will be a substantial cause, substantial causes, and cooperative conditions.
일단 히랍 줄이 개발 쳐발라. 히랍 년에다 히랍 해적시킨 이쪽 거야.
In order for wisdom to arise in the continuum, it takes both the substantial causes of wisdom and the cooperative conditions of wisdom to come
빼는
together.
가르세나 빼나 상기 토바시야 제발 당고 내적 모습 제 당미 모습 토바 히랍 줄이 개발신다 때 검지 당할 때는 상기도 와.
So, for example, in order to attain the state of widowed, first we need to attain the yogic direct perception that realizes emptiness, and once that is arisen, once that has arisen in the continuum, we can attain Buddhahood, right?
제단 당미 모습 토바 히랍되다 줄이 개발 쳐발라. 티그 년에다 해적시킨 이쪽 거야.
In order to develop the wisdom of selflessness in the continuum, both the substantial causes and the cooperative conditions have to come together.
맨날 힘가 근육이 개발 쳐발라. 안 요티가 있다 년에대 사운드에는 가르세나 제고도와 제단 주카린티 코랑 사무직도와 아드네 년에는 사무지 안에 렌직시키나 쇼당 류당 조실 이만 오 소거되는 요티도와.
So, for example, in order to have a field, we need to have, like, if we want to have some good crops, first we need to have the seed. So the seed will be the substantial cause. But the seed alone is not enough. We also need to have the heat and the moisture. We need to have a fertilizer and the sunlight. So they all have to come together.
어떤 나긴 아주 대답이 가르쳐서 두숨 자베 그염 나긴게 다음에 무슨 또 내적 무슨 가서 줄이 개발 쳐발라. 가르 거르선 티 년에다 렌직시키 인좀 받은 게 거야.
And in the same way, in order to develop that mother of the victorious ones of the three times, the wisdom of selflessness. So it takes both substantial causes and cooperative conditions for us to develop that.
다 년에테 가르 거르서는 다 토섬 검섬 히랍 거래.
So what are the substantial causes? So these are the wisdom. This is the wisdom that arises from listening, contemplation, and meditation.
맨날 다음에 무슨 또 배가 통남도 공남 줄이 개발 쳐발라.
For example, in order to develop the wisdom that directly realizes selflessness in the path of sin and in the path of meditation.
다음에 더 시트게 또 배 히라손되게 땡겐지 졸람 줄이 개발.
One first needs to give rise to the wisdom of selflessness, which realizes emptiness with a meaning generality, realizing emptiness with a meaning generality, and relying on the coming together.
촉성. 다음에 무슨 또 배 통남도 공남 줄이 개발라.
In order to develop the wisdom that directly realizes the emptiness in the path of sin and in the path of meditation.
다음에 더 시트게 또 배 히라손되게 땡겐지 졸람 줄이 개발 못 들어.
It has to be preceded by the conceptual realization of selflessness with the coming together of Kamabinding special insight before that.
다음에 히라손되게 땡겐지는 다음에 더 시트게 또 배게 졸람 귤에 개발시바라 디기 녜렌라 가르거르세소나 다음에 배 가르세소나 삼노탄야게 다음에 발라 삼탄야게 근데 배 삼종 히라 아는 모드도 그래.
And then in order to have that realization of selflessness, conceptual realization of selflessness in the path of preparation, which is conceptual realization of selflessness, relying on the meditative stability of coming together of combining special insight. So in order for that to arise, first one needs to listen and contemplate about selflessness.
Listen 라메바니. 네 벤친 제토. 다음에 도시설게 또 히라 손지 땡게지 귤에 개발시바라.
So for that conceptual realization of selflessness, relying on the meditative stability of the coming together of combining special insight.
그런 게 닐랭 가르세소나 다음에 도시설에서 이발 하고와치게 삼종 히라 딩엘랭 거야래.
It needs to be preceded by wisdom arising from contemplation that thinks about selflessness.
삼종 히랍 닐랭 가르세소나 안에 추는 게 내륙럽에 롭종시에네 토바치베겐 토종 히랍디 삼종 히랍 닐레레.
So this will be the substantial cause, and the substantial cause of that will be listening to teachings about the meaning of selflessness.
대답이 동반이라 토바당 동반이라 토바지 토베기 히랍제 동반이라 삼바지 삼종 히랍제 대답이 토종 히랍드 삼종 동반이라 맥네 토종 히랍당 삼종 히랍드 가지 토과르세소나 소람디 토비야레.
And so when does one attain that wisdom arising from listening and the wisdom arising from contemplation, thinking about the wisdom of selflessness? So that wisdom arise in the path of accumulation.
당보 동반이라 롭종시
First studying about emptiness.
동반이게 동 양의 배 토바제
Hearing again and again about the meaning of selflessness.
다 텔레티네 소스 토바 텔레틴 동반인들이 레샤 삼베 히랍지 용선데 토종 히랍스기야레.
And depending on that listening, when one has wisdom that arises from that listening, so that is the wisdom arising from listening.
동반이라 양의 토바 지발레 때네.
Depending on listening, studying again and again about emptiness.
다 동반이들이 레샤스 소스 양의 토바 지발 때들이 레샤스베 소스 로케디 토종 히랍스기야레.
When one thinks emptiness is just like that, so this is the wisdom arising from listening. This is a substantial cause. A substantial cause of what? It is the substantial cause of the wisdom arising from contemplation about selflessness.
다 되네 토바시라 동반인들이 레샤스메 로들레디 토종 히랍시 양의 컴플리트한 양의 삼당 때네 양 삼노 땅와 때네 레샤스데 삼종 히랍스기야.
And so first developing the wisdom arising from studying and then thinking about it again and again, taking what was understood and thinking about it again and again until one thinks, oh, it is like that. And once one has that kind of notion, this is the wisdom arising from contemplation.
동반이 양의 토바제
listening again and again to teaching on emptiness.
토바지와 때는 동반인들이 레샤스에서 세미나를 찍래서나.
And when it comes to the mind, the thought thinking emptiness is just like that.
이 삼종 히랍 말다 토종 히랍.
This is not the wisdom arising from contemplation. This is the wisdom arising from listening.
다 되네 들이 레샤스에 로디 양의 가르스네 양 삼노땅 다 되네 삼노땅 와 때는 양 동반이 동 레샤스네 네반예도 안에 가르스소나 삼종 히랍.
And then thinking about that meaning and thinking about it again and again and again until one point one thinks, oh, emptiness is just like that. And once one has that certainty, this is the wisdom arising from a contemplation.
제가 소람 값에 장수쌤 그 셈베 그 돈이라 토종 히랍 삼종 히랍의 잡이야. 돈일메베 삼종 토삼 히랍.
So in the path of accumulation, one has wisdom arising. In the path of accumulation, one develops the wisdom arising from listening and the wisdom arising from contemplation about emptiness.
아, 되니까는 동반이를命네. 토바자 많이 와. 삼바자 많이 와. 동반이를命네. 안에 셈제 집에 담고 땡겨지 톱. 동반이를 맥베게 힘내 톱. 되네 동반이를 배 제파치네 당외가 네 배. 상통 톱네 때 동반이를 매고 히라선데 땡게지 톱디 되네 졸람 레바레 다데 곰종 히라레 다 당게 토종 히라 다 곰종 히라 동일 매고 곰종 히라.
And then not only having the wisdom that arises from listening to teachings about emptiness, and not only having the wisdom that arises from contemplation about emptiness, but taking that wisdom that is developed from listening and the wisdom that is developed by contemplation, and creating like a unique understanding that comes from meditation. So first developing calm abiding, like a concentration, which is concentrating on emptiness, and from that concentration also special insight. And when one puts the two together, when one is able to hold both the calm abiding and the special insights together, and to realize emptiness conceptually, so this is the path of preparation, the coming together of calm abiding and special insight.
제가 동일의 맥네 힐라 손데게 땡게지 톱디 아니 가서는 소람이 졸람 뽑아래 맞아 힐라 손데 땡게지 톱았던지 소람 졸람 뽑여 말다 동일의 맥이 힐라 손데 땡게지 톱디 아니 얘네 동일의 맥의 토종다 삼종 값을 소람 동일의 맥의 힐라 손데 땡게지 톱디 아니 소람 졸람 뽑아래스.
So not any kind of coming together of calm abiding special insight will be called the path of preparation. Only when one thinks about emptiness, only when one takes emptiness as the observed object, and with emptiness as the observed object, is able to hold both calm abiding and special insight, then one enters the path of preparation.
어다 동일의 맥의 힐라 손데 땡게지 톱디 말라 동이 돈치 cir게 또비가네 힐라 손데 땡게지 톱바단 졸람 뽑래 나 졸람 레바나 졸람 값을라 동반이라 맥의 힐라 손데 땡게지 맥네 동반이라 안에 돈치 cir게 또비야 돈치 cir게 말 쓰고 나 또파 동케데 또파 이바선 졸람 상아 또파 이바선자 동반 힐라 손데 땡게지 동반이 또거여래 또나야 돈시당 제베건 또거여래 마도 돈시당 만데가 무슨 또거여 말아.
And this marks the path of preparation. So what marks the path of preparation? That very realization, when one is able to hold together, when one takes emptiness as the object of meditation, and with emptiness as the object of meditation, one is able to hold both the calm abiding and also to have insight, special insight. And when one is able to hold these two together, one enters the path of preparation. But still, at that time, it is still with a meaning generality, meaning that it's not so clear. It's not at that time. It's still conceptual. So it is still conceptual with a meaning generality, and this is the path of preparation.
Why? 내가 문제들 벤 겨토마선 가이사나 졸람 그 값에 돈이래 매베 힐라손데 땡겐데 돈이 돈시절기 또 그여랬어. 쓰고 또 그여 말해. 가르치는 센 똑파 이바선도 똑파 돈시당 제베건 또 연선도 무슨 쓰고 여 말이 이제 되래.
So entering into the path of preparation, one cannot still realize the emptiness clearly. One cannot have a clear image of emptiness. And why? Because it's still conceptual. The mind is still conceptual, and because the mind is still using a mental image in order to understand, as the realization is not clear.
다 되지. 다 들으면 다 들으시는 당보 졸람 터도 당보 졸람 주 되네 제모 되네 소파 되네 초쇼 다 되네 야야야야 드롭이 값을라 아니 디커스는 돈시 혁충도 안 돈이 베시드 드로여래.
And the path of preparation consists of 4 parts. The first part is the path of preparation of heat. The second part is the path of preparation of peak. The third part is the path of preparation of forbearance. And the fourth part is the path of preparation of supreme mundane Dharma. Each part of the path of preparation, the meaning generality becomes weaker and weaker, and the direct realization becomes clearer and clearer until one realizes completely directly, like when this becomes the connection to the next part.
다 되네 가르치는 졸람 쇼쇼레 값을라 아니 돈시 빼다 요리나 매번 나히 다 쓰고
At the time of the super mundane Dharma, super mundane Dharma of the path of preparation, there is still a meaning generality, but the meaning generality is so subtle that it is almost as if there is no meaning generality.
다 되는 동시 상만 매파샤도 무슨 또도 통남데 히라선리 땡게 될 동시 차다 매파샤네 동이 무슨 데 카투 동도 말 통나
Once the meaning generality becomes completely non-existent, one realizes emptiness directly, and that direct realization of emptiness marks the path of seeing.
어다 디가서 파랑가데스야 돼.
At that time, it is Paragate.
다 될 때는 양의 컴퓨터 와 때는 안에 배 컴퓨터 왜 값을라 안에 히라선리 동이 무슨 또 히라선리 땡게 될 양의 컴퓨터 와 이바선다 이 컴퓨터 왜 그람데 봄남
And then after that, habituating again and again with this unification of combined and special insight. And this is the path of meditation.
안 파라삼가데스야 돼.
Parasamgate.
디 파라삼가데스 진짜데 ben 가르치다
This is expressed by Parasamgate.
동이 무슨 또 히라선리 그 땡게제 말 마토 와사데 또 통람 이 양의 컴퓨터 쉐베가 안에 이 곰람들라 안에 파라삼가데스
The realization of emptiness directly in a way that it was never realized, never seen before, is the path of seeing. And then habituating with that realization again and again is the path of meditation, which is expressed by Parasamgate.
다 들었더니 샘팅게 녀몽당 티샤고 바샤 녀르당 히르プ 샘팅 그마 바샤 자말을 빠네 상진 컴포토데 어디 소하스테레
And depending on that, abandoning both the afflictive obscurations and the cognitive obscurations, which are the predispositions placed by the afflictive obscuration, and being able to completely abandon both the afflictive obscurations and the cognitive obscuration, is Bodhi Svaha, the
난
state of
너네 대
Buddhahood.
너네 대답이 남기 가서 율이 개발 시발라
And so, in short, in order for us to develop the omniscient mind of the Buddha, the
난저
omniscience
율
in our
난저 율 곰람 개발 건데 저거 티녀래 곰 율이 개발해
the substantial cause of omniscience is the path of meditation. So we need to develop that in the continuum.
아 곰람 율이 개발 시발 티기 녀래 통람 율이 개발 건데 저거
In order to develop the path of meditation in the continuum, the substantial cause of that is the path of sin. So we need to develop the path of sin before that.
통람 율이 개발 시발라 티기 녀래 가서 가르 졸람 터바시 그래
In order to develop the path of sin in the continuum, first we need to develop the substantial cause of that, which is the path of preparation.
졸람 터바시발 딩고데 동일의 매베 투삼 그안 히랍 소람 율이 개발 시 그래
In order to develop the path of preparation in the continuum, it has to be preceded by its own substantial cause, which is the path of accumulation.
어떻게 율이 개발 시발 동반이 그 동을 다 롭종시 토바시 그래
In order to develop the path of accumulation in the continuum, one needs to study and contemplate about emptiness.
대답이 동반이를 맹니다 가르토스 동반이라 베투 당보 토바지 바드 삼바지 타마 공바지 당보 토종 히랍 바드 삼종 히랍 타마 공종 히랍 나데 공내에 공대 빼네 안에다 들리지는 것도 상기 그거 상다다 예린디 안에 가르쳐서나 즉 나도 토삼 공성 히랍 율이 깨네 다 뜻이야 된 나도 다음에도 히랍 예린
So since we need to develop the wisdom of selflessness in the continuum, first by listening, then contemplation, and finally by meditation, so the wisdom of selflessness becomes the substantial cause of our realization.
다 렌직 시킨 다 가르 거르세서나 안 대답이 동반이 배 율이 개발 시발 소소라니 토삼 검성 배 토삼 검성 배네 배 히랍 율이 개발 시발라 안 롭종 시발라 안 롭종 시네 롬킹 게긴 배 가르세서나 지 동반이 그 동바 땅버 친게 게긴 약고지 거래 다 나진 가르세서 동반이 바 동버 친게 상지게 용 센데 롭종 시세 용 약고지 거래 어다 되서 참마디 시게 깨차비
In order to develop the wisdom of selflessness in the continuum, first of all, it takes also the outer conditions. So the outer conditions will be like a good teacher that is able to teach emptiness exactly in the right way. and also the scriptures of the Buddha, who shows the way to think, contemplate, meditate on emptiness. And so these are the two outer conditions which are also necessary.
다가 나기 가르친 대답이 히럽 귤이 개발시바라 가르고르세서나 대답이 소소랑 토삼검선 제바다 이가는 개개인 약보 대비 약보 다 디가는 다동 가르고르세서나 안날 라마다 예담다 나파데네 히럽라 지수 잡에 양서 만나 땀나다 디베 계신 거래.
So in order to realize emptiness, he takes the inner conditions, the substantial cause of listening, contemplation, meditation. On top of that, to have the outer conditions of the teacher and the scriptures of the Buddha. And on top of that, the extremely important condition is the deity of wisdom, Manjushri. So making aspirational prayers to Manjushri is extremely important.
제가 먼저 왔네. 라마다 예담 안에 이 사파드 예담 지수 잡에 양 소만나 계신 거래.
So to make aspirational prayers to the Lama and the Idam, especially to the Idam Manjushri, is extremely important.
대대 봐서 대디 제라 아는 게 당기 뭐람 잡네지 알아봐서 장야 당한테 야야 돼 당보가를 연합된 바섬 당야다 되네 가르선 지수 잡에 양 소만나 자들에.
And so after the prayers, when I recite the verses that are after these verses, I also say the mantra of Manjushri, Om Anadi, and that's what we do. We make aspirational prayers to Manjushri.
이 제랑의 가르쳐선 다기 뭐람 자야 돼 지수 잡에 양 뭐람 자기요레스.
So after that, the prayer that I make is the prayer to Jetsun Manjushri.
강의선은 지수 잡에 양데 안에 히랍 플라샤데 봐서 막 히랍 귤이 개발치바라는 시기 된식시 진 조그다 배 약휴자기요레스.
Because Jetsun Manjushri is the deity of wisdom, and so Manjushri becomes the best assistance in order to realize emptiness.
제가 남비긴 소소랑이 그 토삼곰성 그 히랍당 안에 시기긴 안에 제 라마당 개베hin이당 안에 배배사 약보당 아 예당 클라 주진 잠배양 어다 되네 그 처음에 그 배신한 상점 괜찮 상만 좀 받에 히랍 귤게 그래서.
So when the inner conditions, which are listening, contemplation, and meditation, they come together with the outer conditions, which are the wisdom, which are the teacher, the scriptures, the Buddha, so and Manjushri as the idam of the wisdom. So when these two come together, one develops wisdom in the continuum.
제가 대마도 제가 되네 봐서다 당이 주진 잠배양으로서 말하면 약고야 임시트레스.
And so this is the reason. This is the reason for the need to make aspirational prayers to Jetsun Manjushri.
다가 나신 가르쳐선 대답이다 히랍 귤이 개발치바라 안에 시기 현식시킨다 난그 가르쳐 년련다 대답이 그 년에 참만 좀네 히랍 귤이 개발치바라야 신호선선 그 바시 망보 요와선자 근데 그 바시에 매봤어 아니야 대 히랍 귤이 개야 손남사 어다들이 이거레스.
And also, in order to develop the wisdom that realizes emptiness directly in the continuum, since for that realization there are also obstacles like inner, outer, secret obstacles, so also the negative conditions needs to be removed, and the positive conditions and merit needs to be accumulated.
가이선은 히랍 귤이 개발치바라 바시 요티 바시 매봤어 그래 히랍 귤이 개발치바라 튼킹의 간점 수소는 싼 거야티 손 척사와 그가 정말 이거요.
Because in order to develop wisdom in the continuum, like there are obstacles who prevent the realization, the development of wisdom in the continuum, the wisdom of selflessness. And so in order to remove the obstacles, the inner outer secret obstacles, and in order to develop the positive conditions and merit, so this is another purpose that we try to achieve.
제장 촉사는 드바 장을 제발라 아 연락 드바 디나네 촉사바 드바 장 이가 연락 드베는 되디요.
In order to achieve this purpose, in order to accumulate merit and to purify obscurations, the seven limbs have both these practices of accumulation and purification.
된데 봐서도 당긴 뒤에 지진 잠배 양본네. 안에 뒤 군주나 땅도 하마다 간만 가시 내야디 가르치고 있어서나 지진 잠배 양된데 곰네. 아 되네 뒤에 군주나 안에 연락 되고 좀 땅야다. 뒤 지에서는 히랍 무릎 시야 어딘데 좀 땅이야.
And so after, when we did the meditation on Manjushri, we also practiced the seven limbs. And the 7 limbs are in order to accumulate merit and to purify the obscurations and to directly realize emptiness.
근데 이해 거라면 더 들으려면 거네. 세상 지춘 잠배 양 되는데 겁네.
So meditating on Manjushri in front.
이 근두나 안에 배 연락 된 거는 속사와 두바 장화 되지.
And in front of Manjushri, accumulating merit and purifying obscurations.
뒤에서 희락은 왜 진압되는 식이요. 레생.
Oh, and after that, receiving the blessings of wisdom from Manjushri.
근데 봐서다 당보 된 지춘 잠배 양곰.
So first meditating on Jetsun Manjushri in front.
다 되는 샷제 봤어. tema som sibes samta.
And then thinking about prostration. So visualizing 3 prostrations.
어디 샷제비 연락.
And this is the limb of prostration.
다 되는 초파피베 초파 tema som 피베 samta.
And then making an offering. So 3 times visualizing making offerings.
어디 초페 연락.
And this is the limb of offering.
다 되는 룸에 있으면 대파 잠아 샤파 지금 삼바체.
And then thinking, I confess all negativities of body, speech, and mind.
어디 샤페 연락.
And this is the limb of confession.
다 되는 지춘 잠배 양 개바 제시 연락체.
And then rejoicing in the virtues of Jetsun Manjushri.
대 제시 연락.
And this is rejoicing.
어디 되는 지춘 잠배 양 semsen 담지 상마게 바 추지 코로나한테 중국 거고 연락.
And then asking Jetsun Manjushri to remain and turn the wheel of the Dharma for the sake of all sentient beings. And this is the limb of asking to turn the wheel of the Dharma.
다 되는 semsen 담지 상마게 바 지춘 잠배 양 영엘마다 육소스 소만한 자티 영엘마다 소와데비.
And then asking Manjushri to remain until all sentient beings attain the state of complete Buddhahood. And this is the limb of asking to remain and not to pass into Paranirvana.
다 되는 가조 룸에 있으면 개바 두바 달라 되네. semsen 담지 동 사지 공부 토와 쇼세리. 가르쳐서는 뭐비 연락.
And then depending on the virtues that we have created with body, speech, and mind, may all sentient beings attain the state of complete Buddhahood. This is the limb of dedication.
어떻게 섬들 다 디난 소사와 두바 장화 이가 되리야.
So thinking about that, it puts together both the accumulation of merit and the
가이선의 샤페 연락이 가이선의 샤페 연락이 대파 장마 샤파 칭에서 샤페 연락들 소와 두바 장화래. 나한테만 왜 샤페바 초바 샤페바 때는 소남사 초바페바 때는 소남사 제시 연락 때는 소남사 중국어와 그와 때는 소남사 양일마다 소와데바 때는 소남사 안에 가르쳐서 뭐 뭐는 따바 때는 소남사 어떻게 죽디 소남사요.
So we have accumulation and purification. The purification is coming from the confession. The price of confession laying bare. In this practice, we confess our negativities and with the 4 opponent powers. And in this practice, we purify our obscurations. And then the other 6 practices are to accumulate virtue. So when we are prostrating, when we are offering, when we rejoice,
샤체바 때네 소남사 초바페바 때네 소남사 아니 제스 이랑 때네 소남사 가르쳐는 중국어와 그와 때네 소남사 아니 양엘리만다데 소와다바 때네 이 소남사 뭐뭐람 때네 소남사 소상마데네 속사비 나데스.
So when we are prostrating, we accumulate merit, and when we are offering, we accumulate merit. When we rejoice, we accumulate merit. When we ask to turn the wheel of the Dharma, we accumulate merit. When we ask not to pass into Paranirvana, we accumulate merit. And when we dedicate the virtues completely to the state of Buddhahood, so we accumulate merit in all of these ways.
다 때네 샤파치바 때네 또 비기 샤파치바 때네 아니 두바장.
And then with the confession, laying bare the faults, with the 4 opponent powers, we purify the obscurations.
아니 속사 두바장 치사나 안 디지스 장주선 뷰리게 약베 항상 데베데 누가 첨부 소래.
So a practice like this, which puts together both the accumulation of merit and the purification of obscurations, it creates unbelievable power of virtue.
에나 베 가듯이 나월세나.
So for example, what would it be like?
에나 라마자 첨부치 배용유나.
So, for example, if there is a very holy Lama that
양의
would come,
뽕보지 꾼동지 연구요나
or like a big leader, like someone who is like a big leader.
big leader and special guest 꾼동.
Oh. So if there was a big leader or a special guest that would come,
나 가르치기 당보도 칸바짱만 써봐야다. 칸바짱만 써야 제게. 나한테 드바짱배 쳐들이. 나 디가는 가래. 다동양 칸베 이용들라. 잘라 닝제보다 메도다. 닝제보 시작도 속사와. 나 딘다고래.
so for this big guest that would come, first of all we would clean the house, and cleaning the house is like the confession of the negativities. This is like cleaning the entire house, and then on top of that also we will be putting flowers and making decorations to make it very beautiful. So this is the accumulation of merit.
제단 꾼동식 강보 칸베 나를 백이요나 마페베 뭐나 칸바데 짱마직서. 나한테는 칸베 나를 백 고야가 백 제도서 약보치 짱마진 잘라 닝제보다 드그니 대사에서 배차진 짱마 상보진 시작도. 대나신게 나주 쇼랍지 남지 다음에 또 히랍 귤이 깨버치와라 괜히 당자베게 배 칸베난 괜히 당자베게 들어가서 파장 안에 지 튼진 그 가르쳐 소사바지 칸베난 고야가 잘라서 나신게네 지 가르쳐서는 손은 소사 어떻게 거야 이나도.
So in a similar way to, you know, when we would have a guest, and for this guest we will first of all clean the house. We will make the house very clean. We will throw away all the garbage, make the house clean. So this is the same like the laying bare the faults, the confession. And then on top of that, like we will also put flowers and make beautiful. And this flowers and making beautiful is like the accumulation of merit.
어떤 히타 소소 위주의 즉 정바단 인제다 안 다음에 또 히랍도 소소 샘딩을 깨그려와.
And in the same way, one needs to develop in the depths of one's heart to develop love and compassion and bodhicitta, right?
보상 것은 히랍도 나 샘딩을 깨그려와.
And the wisdom of listening, contemplation, meditation has to arise from within one's mind, right?
어떤 샘을 깨버치 발라서 당고 샘바짱마서 그래. 제가 칸베나 괜히 짱마서 거나 당고 샘나 짱마서 샘다 짱마서 맞나 토상 것은 히랍 가 샘나 깨드 그래.
So in order for this to arise in the continuum, first one needs to clean one's mind, to make the mind clean. Without having a clean mind, how can the wisdom of listening, contemplation, and meditation arise in the mind?
배는 칸바 괜히 짱자 강대한 디날 꾼동 카리 되는 시.
For example, if the house is filled with garbage, how would we invite a guest to this house?
그래서 나도 꾼동 단답에 람탑히니 다음에 또 히랍도 전sem도 소 샘딩을 되는 시바 시발라.
And so for us to invite that which is like the guest, which are the method and wisdom, the path of the two method and wisdom, in order to invite the path of the two method and wisdom,
다음에 또 히랍 람탑히니 다음에 또 히랍 꾼동 단답에 람탑히니 다음에 또 히랍도 샘빈나라 샘 칸베나 되는 시바 시발라.
in order to invite to the house of the mind that which is like the guest, which are the two method and wisdom.
당복가스는 샘바짱 샘 괜히 짱 말 희용 샘바짱마서 그래.
So first we need to throw away all of the garbage of the mind and to make the mind clean.
샘빈나라 즉 남토당 제도당 안에 착당당 요문 강대나 딱 가르치네 안에 다음에 또 히랍도 전심 꾼동 나바니 가르치 되는 시도 그래. 토삼 검성 히랍 가르치 되는 시도.
So if the mind is filled with hopes and fears, and if the mind is filled with misconceptions, if the mind is filled with attachment and hatred and ignorance, how can we invite in the mind these two aspects of the path, which are the wisdom and the bodhicitta?
일단 꾼동자 첨보당 잡에 토삼 검성 그 히랍당 장식 그 샘트네 그 소소 소소 샘그 줄이 깨버치발라 방보 샘바 소소 칸바당 잡에 소소 샘데베 짱마서네 샘그 괜히 또 파 육네 아니 샘그 나나 배직 가르쳐서나 꾼동 내내 히치당 잡에 그네 소나다 이시가 촉 속대서 그다 초바표네 아베 즉 샘바 짱마지 데 거야.
So if we want to invite this extremely holy guest, the extremely holy guest of bodhicitta, and the extremely holy guest of the wisdom of selflessness, the two aspects of the past, if we wish to invite that guest to our mind, so first we need to make the mind very clean, to practice the confession in order to clean the mind.
제가 드레 바송도 소소 롭종 제베 값살라 꿀웅 상보 거리 셈바 짱마 거리 시임지 데레 삼도 땅에 거네 꿀웅 짱마 거리 셈바 상보 데레 냠레 제베 값을 꿀웅 짱마 거리 셈바 상보 제스 임지 데라 내가
And so this is the reason why at the time of studying, one needs to have a pure heart and a pure motivation. And also at the time of contemplation, one needs to have a pure heart and a pure motivation. And also at the time of meditation, one needs to have a pure heart and a pure motivation.
드레 바송도 소소 그 단다 통화에 단다 간저 다다 바레 독고 땅게데 머리바다 차소 녀모 차데 열때 매바서와시 다음에도 히랍 고거래 히랍 줄이 개발시와라 아니지 소소 그 뭐네 이제 토삼검사 냠레시야 아니지 그 게베 힘이다 아니지 클라베 클라 예담다 아니 배샤다 저 참마데 항상 계신 거인 봐서 저 참마라 샘팅 당화다 쪼베 뭐니 그jap다 그거 다 집에 건 당화 그거 지금 백케신 거래
So since beginners' lifetimes, we have been tormented by ignorance, and because that ignorance have been the cause of all our problems and all of our suffering, since beginners' lifetimes, and the Lama and the scriptures, they are the source for our possibility to be free from all of this suffering. That's why it's very important to have a very clean attitude towards the Lama and the teachings, and to have genuine respect and genuine appreciation and joy towards the Dharma and the Lama.
드레 바송도 간저 배 샘 강바 장마 디나라 아니 라베 라 지순 잠베 야 히어 클라 덴데 히바 시바라 가르 거르세소나 샘난 그 드바 괜히 단데 샘 드바서 파야 샘나레 초바당 다베가 배 제카르선 소난 그 소토서 때서 자직시네 어다 드리 거야
And so just in the same way that one invites a very important guest, and one will first clean the house and also make the house very beautiful. So
자 쳔보 지순 잠베 야 히랍 디 땡게 녜면도 아이세서는 데이터뷰가 다 라베 라베 근로나네 개체휴 라베 라 지순 잠베 야 소소 샘미나데 스템 컴베나 덴데 히고나
and if we wish to invite the most important guest, which is the deity of wisdom, Manjushri.
괜히 단다베 샘미나베 샤당 녀모다 남도도서 파 요코
So we need to throw away that which is like the garbage, which are the afflictions like anger, attachment, and ignorance.
샘나네 제 마데바당 먹을바당 아니 샤당 그 샘당 또 상마데 가서 괜히 그 상 파리 요네
Madepatan maumpa
먹을바
selpoch.
대파 매바 구잡 매바
And so we need to throw away the lack of faith and the lack of respect.
렉세카레
Lack like mepa.
구잡 매바 구잡 매바당 대파 매바당 아니 샘 샤당 녀모 쪽 대바당 강조만조 샘그 괜히 상마데 파리 요네 아니 샘 짱마선 티날 주스 잠베 양 전압시 고야
So in order to invite Jetsun Manjushri, we need to get rid of the non-faith, like not having faith, and we need to get rid of not having respect, and also to get rid of attachment, and to get rid of hatred, and ignorance, and the misconceptions, and the hopes and the fears. So we need to get rid, to throw away all of that.
대소 괜히 그서 파리 요네
So throwing all of this garbage
샘바 짱마서
and having a clean heart.
디나르 주스 잠베 양 전압스 로고야레
And with this clean heart, we need to receive the blessings of Jetsun Manjushri.
맨날 가르쳐서 나도 최장마지 야홀로가 제발 소소 노시 장마지 공부 장마 거래 마도지 노시 장마면은 나 휴직 때로서 랍이한다 소소티나 괜히 교서는 지마고 하양 거 때나 최장마 팬도 야마를 괜히 그래
For example, if we want to receive clean water, so we want to receive clean water and we have a vessel, but suppose the vessel is filled with garbage. So if the vessel that we have for the water is filled with garbage, we will not be able to put the clean water inside, will we? In order to put clean water, we need to have a clean vessel, right? And in the same way, in order to receive the wisdoms of listening, the wisdom of listening, contemplation, meditation, and in order to receive the blessings of Jetsun Manjushri, first of all, we need to have a clean vessel. Clean mind.
tendency sempa zangma cha je den choksa jujun jambe yang duni ya ne ane nga zo tangbo cha se ba den choba pe ba den xia ba pe ya den ji si ran den chung ko ko ba den yang le men da so wan de ba den mo mo na o da di choksa je sam tang bu jim se tere.
And so, in order to clean the mind, and also in order to create the merit, so that's why we practice the 7 limbs, starting with prostration, and then the prostration and the offerings. After the offering, we do the confession and rejoicing, asking the Buddhas to teach the Dharma and to remain, not to pass into paranirvana, and rejoice, like dedicating the virtues for complete enlightenment. So this is why we do it, in order to accumulate merit and to purify negativities.
Ota di jela so da sem ge so sem de no shi na yi be zangma hi wa cha de ba zangma cha ne da sem na le be sang ji ge chenam jujun jambe yang chenam ju ya le be cha de xin zo sa de yo song zang.
And so since this all creates the conditions, creating a mind which is very clean, and also a mind which is very beautiful, in order to receive Manjushri.
다 되네 가르친 주준 잠배 양의 꾸이시나 송구시나 토구시나 나 토구시나 나래 캠베시나 제비시나 뉴비시나 나 캠베시나 나래 배든 캠바 배 히라베 사바 세바 뉴바 어다 되지시나 참아서서 휴백 무엇이
And then one visualizes receiving the different blessings of Jetsun Manjushri. So receiving the blessings of the holy, like receiving the blessings of wisdom, of the wisdom of Manjushri, and receiving the blessings of love and power of Manjushri, and within the blessings of the wisdom of Manjushri, receiving the blessings of the wisdom of listening, the wisdom of contemplation, and the wisdom of meditation, and also receiving the blessings of the quick wisdom, the profound wisdom, the wisdom that easily understands, and the extensive wisdom. So receiving all the different kinds of blessings of all the different kinds of wisdom of Manjushri.
티 간에 다동 간 치성 안에 주준 잠배 양 꾸이시나 송구시나 토구시나 봐.
And then on top of that, also receiving the blessings of the holy body as the holy speech and the holy mind of Manjushri.
토구시나 나니 제비시나 캠베시나 뉴비시나
And within the holy mind, the blessings of the wisdom, the love, and the power of Manjushri.
다 캠베시나 나나 안에 히라베 뉴바 사바 세바 델라디니바 컨디치스테바 로마 차치와 기반 고바키바 다 토종 히라 삼종 히라 곰종 히라 다 도저 자마 줄라 마키바 기바시 기바 냐마시 냐마 콘디 콘디 베베 샤나 토송 삼바치 그레세.
And within the blessings of the mind, of the wisdom of Manjushri, receiving the blessings of the clear wisdom, the profound wisdom, the swift wisdom, the wisdom that easily understands, the blessings of the wisdom to lead the fortunate ones, the wisdom to refute wrong views, the wisdom to please the learned ones. So receiving all the blessings of the holy body, speech, and mind of Manjushri, and whatever blessings were not attained, they are attained, and those who have been attained they do not degenerate but increase more and more.
다양 섬치에서 가르쳐서는 토종 히라 삼종 히라 곰종 히라
And also the wisdoms of attaining the wisdom of listening, contemplation, and meditation.
어떤 돈은 대답을 히라 참아 줄을 마치바 기바시 기바 뭐냐바 공원에 비슷한 바.
And all of these wisdoms, whatever wisdoms have not arisen in the continuum, they arise, and whatever wisdom that has arisen, they do not degenerate but increase more and more.
어떤 텔레티는 소람처럼 통람 검람치는 샘팅 좀 바자치 말을 반 산지 컴파토비아 같다 젤라마 톱송 삼치 말.
And depending on that, going through the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of sin, the path of meditation, and abandoning all the faults of the mind up to the very last one, and attaining all the good qualities and the state of normal learning Buddhahood.
제가 또 당기 나서 배 바깥에 대해서 가만 저기 현가지 몇점 대샤다 디난 상태 대상만 상당히
So before we had a short period that we stopped after in the middle of the prayer, and we were meditating for 5 minutes. So this is what we were thinking about.
아 되는 롭종신 토삼공성 냠내 가르치나 당보 가르쳐서나 지금 뭐시 장마 거와 나기 셈바 장마 거와 sonda 심체 탐지 동사지 거마 토와제 디시된 건 연기 인상 그런 그 효스tere.
And then in the same way that whatever we do is like listening, contemplation, and meditation, we need to have a clean mind, a clean motivation in order to do that, like clean vessel. So that's why we start the teachings with that clean motivation, thinking for the sake of all sentient beings. In order to attain the state of Buddha, I will listen to the Dharma teachings.
제가 가도 토삼공성 그 냠내 가르치나 이 냠내 장마다 셈 그띵데 약이 와서나 당보 셈 장마 속에 뺏기신 거래.
And so whatever practice we do, whether it is listening, whether it is contemplation, whether it is meditation, we need to have the cleanest of heart. We need to have the purest of heart, and that's why we start with this motivation.
맨날 누직나 철로가 제발 당보 놓치 장마 건도가.
For example, in order to put water in a vessel, the vessel first needs to be clean, right?
누 단자베 그 소소 그 셈디나나 토삼공성 그 히라당 장바단 인젤라서 람탑히니 창와도 소소 셈나를 바 셈 규를 약보지 바 약바시바라 당보 셈바 장마 거래.
And that which is like the vessel, which is one's mind. So in order for one's mind to really be able to receive the blessings of bodhicitta and the wisdom of selflessness, first of all, the mind needs to be very clean, to have very good motivation. So this is the meaning.
제가 노시 장마 메나 티나 쇼카셀로서 장마 촐라도도 되나 이 세바 장마 메나 안 토삼공성 가르치는 장마 직진 초직 안 좋네. 해도 용부요 말해.
And so if the vessel is unclean, so no matter how much water we put inside, it will always be dirty. But if the vessel is clean, so whatever water we pour inside, it will be clean. And so that's why the motivation is very important.
어떻게 항상 개침버려.
Otherwise, it will go through, become one of the 8 worldly concerns. So this is extremely important.
아 되네 그 노시 장마 소차베 제라
And then after cleaning the vessel,
안 셈바 장마 지네 항상 저 당마다 구능성보다 네 소소직 개발 좀도 배 가힌데 쪼힌데 존주 안 셈바 장마 착소나
so after cleaning the vessel and having a mind which is extremely clean, and a mind which is also like wishes to practice virtue, a mind which is very enthusiastic, a mind which is very keen to listen, contemplate, meditate for the sake of all sentient beings.
셈바 장마 착소나
Once the mind become very clean,
디가나 다동양 가서 8월 신바 쪽이 냠니 심비건 암초니에요 나초니야
in addition to that, we can also listen to the Dharma teachings with the 6 perfections in mind.
맨날 소소직 나초 냠베 값살라다 짐베 가르스 생각해서나 짐바세디 마다 가기 짐바타라 마다 되는 돈나 추 냠베 값살라
And so in short, at the time of listening to Dharma teachings,
아미 소소 그 가르스는 추 냠야 같이다라 소소 루당 롱초당 개자다 참말에 배 착심에 배거네 배하 냠바이나 안 짐베 냠네 뜻이요래
if one listens to the Dharma teachings without any attachment to one's possessions or objects of enjoyment or virtues, so without any attachment to anything in the mind, so this is the perfection of generosity.
다가나 이쇼 냠베 값살라 소소 루기자 조라미나레 나 개차인 히에당이나레 세미나레 대답을 누가 있음 그배 가르쳐서나 즉 마다베 조파 어다 디수 사마데서 돔네 아추 냠베 값은 앞에 서점 약화선에 누가 있음 그다 서점 약화선이 있어서는 서점 냠네 샤데요
So if we have no attachment, this is the practice, not the practice of the perfection of generosity. It's not the perfection of generosity, but it is the practice of generosity, the perfection of generosity. And then on top of that, having like a mind that wishes to guard, a mind that wishes to guard the conduct of the body, wishes to guard the conduct of speech, and wishes to guard the conduct of the mind, that all of them will be in accordance with the Dharma. So this is the practice of the perfection of morality.
Pena te yuwa yarwa soso chu nye de xiawe kapsa ane pena samsang jawaram bachi songchu nangka chu nye de xia kapsa la partili yang ma yinba chigi chu zhong chigi chig cik duksha tani xiga yo na lamsang la kola mek duksha taya dang kola cik duksha par xia ya dang ane lamsang long lang ya da chaya yarwa ta tisu chigi mi samba ta songchu nye be ring la ane ta di parkabla karisa som tisu tsangma kari yo sanda tisu tsangma de mi di chigi mi lunga isang jawa duksha tsangma ngarang jawa duksha tsangma ma jongwa je tisu sungka isam sona di tsichum je.
So this is possible, right? For example, when we go to receive teachings from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and suppose someone during the teaching is saying a nasty word to us, or someone is looking in a specific way, or and so forth. So instead of like looking in a bad way to the person or saying bad things ourselves, so if one is guarding the mind from these negative actions, so this will be listening with the perfection of morality.
단 너는 게 소쇼 년배 그 값을 소쇼 년 로전 세배 값을 루기 좋아하는 도착 같이 같이 나도 제가 도착 마시 같이 semba 도착 마제 같이 여기 있으면 다들 저런 파시냐네.
So in short, thinking that at the time of the teaching, I will not listen with a negative state of mind. I will not act in a negative way with my speech, and I will not
listen 말이지 아지 너롱 너를 listen 말해 not saying 소쇼 년배랑 게책 도착 희금이 루기 좋아하는 도착 지금이 사모 도착 땅금이.
So thinking that at the time of listening to the teaching, I will not say bad words with my speech, and I will not act in a negative way with my body, and I will not think in a negative way with my mind. And so having that kind of commitment.
다들 저런 파시냐네.
So this is the practice of the perfection of morality that has gone, the perfection of morality that goes beyond.
다들 주 년배 값을라.
And then at the time of listening to the Dharma teachings,
안티 바르갑래 제 쇼년발라 바르시싱게 노파킹게 담나 가세 에다 깔리당테네 가세요나 미드스 상마 소파 공기사나 소페 파시냐네.
at the time of listening to the Dharma teachings, thinking no matter how much obstacles, no matter how much harm, no matter how much difficulty I will face, I will not give up. I will face that with patience. So this is the practice of the perfection of patience that goes beyond.
다데네 나슈 년배 값을라 다가세 두주링 보 히워 친송 가르레섬 강정 마저 마레 마치는 가히엔데 쪼히에다 니디다 존주.
And then at the time of listening to Dharma teachings, not thinking, oh my God, these teachings are so long and this takes so much time and this is kind of boring, but listening with joy and enthusiasm. So this is the practice of the perfection of joyous effort.
다데네 소소 년배 값을라.
And then at the time of listening,
쌤 치료도 많이 와체.
not letting the mind wander outside.
니야 마쿠 거체.
Also not falling asleep.
진구니다 잘베고네 쌤세 지베게 나슈 년바 있나?
Not wandering, not falling asleep, but with a mind which is free from the faults of laxity and excitement, listening to the teaching.
아니 산테 파시냐네.
This is the practice of the perfection of mental stability.
어다 디가나 가르세서나 즉 나슈 년배 값을 빼 약포시네. 책대 값에서 책 참아 맞추고 아니 배 동참아 맞추고 책 동이가 빼 약포시 년대요나 안데 히라 파시냐네.
And then on top of that, having a mind which is able to take the words exactly in the right way, the right order, the right way, and also able to take the meaning exactly the way it is. So not mixing words and meanings and understanding them correctly. This is the practice of the perfection of wisdom.
어다 계슈에서 탐시다 냄베게 고네 추직 년바 추베 추직 년바이나 어다 깨와 새로만 보고 쏘는 산에 깨와 새로만 보고 디파탄로.
And if one is able to listen to Dharma teachings with these 6 practices, to be able to hold all of these 6 practices during the course of one Dharma teaching, so one is able to purify negativities and obscurations of many lifetimes and many eons of negativities.
안 대답이 sempa sambo당 안에 배 8월 침바 죽당 삼바 성기죠 8월 침바 죽고는 다 나쇼 연계였나 강 연직이 쇼데 가르쳐서나
And then having this good heart, and with that good heart, being able to receive teachings and to listen to the Dharma teachings. So what are these Dharma teachings?
어다 나쇼 그날에서 류샤나 나와 대전도 저 받쳐면 봤을
So the teachings are the teaching of Buddhism, and within the teachings of Buddhism, these are teachings about the view of dependent arising and the conduct of harmlessness.
제가 너무 주셔서 류샤나 나와 저 받는다 그래.
So when the Buddha Dharma is condensed, it is condensed into these 2, the view and the conduct.
나와도 가르쳐 대전을 저 받 체험해 봤을
The view is the view of dependent arising, and the conduct is the conduct of not harming.
나와서 가르쳐서나 따탕서 소소 탱킹 소소 삼땅베기 리파 소소 삼땅탕다 nenga지 너비가 가르쳐서 추상화 대중으로 써야 돼.
So what is the view? The view is the way that one thinks. It is the thinking. And what do we think about? We think about how sins exist as dependent arising.
추상화 대중으로 써야 돼. 말 추상화 열대인의 종으로 써야 말해. 가이서서나 디 대중세 유닉 대중세 디 캡션 위경으로 대자 말해.
And saying that all phenomena are dependent arising, it doesn't necessarily mean that all phenomena are arising from causes. If we think dependent arising means something that comes from cause, this is too small of understanding. The scope, the provision is too small.
다다 대중세 디 추상화 대리만 뭐 초바 때네 저비 깨사. 다시 대리만 뭐 초발라 명도 또 받다베 건데 저봐. 너는 가서 대리만 뭐 초비 때네 저비 깨사래.
So right now, dependent arising, it means that sins exist upon the collection of various dependent originations, and mainly depending on name and concept. So this is the way that sins come to exist.
다 대중들라 유닉 대중, 차히의 대중, 안에 또르스의 대중세 나를 민켜다요 정 대중세 대중 승근한 상황들이.
And then dependent arising is condensed into the dependent arising of the parts and the whole, dependent arising of depending on the causes and conditions, and dependent arising of depending on the name and concept. And so these 3, they put together, they have inside of them all the kinds of dependent arising.
다 제단 가르쳐서나 유닉 대중세는 가르쳐서나 유닉 대중세바디 무고 차창 무고세도 말아 즉 랑 예체 망보 두발 때네 저비 무고 지긴 신체 예체 망보 두발 때네 저비 무고 지긴 신체 어다디 가르쳐서나 유닉 대중세 열리 때네 정화 장마디 무고서 야래 동지 네바스타 돈에 랑 제비케바 엔토체 등게 무고 장마디 동지 네바세 어다디 유닉 대중래
Is the dependent arising of cause and effect is related to all the function, all the things. So a thing is something which is able to perform function. Able to perform function, it means something that has the power to give rise to a result. So anything that has the power to give rise to a result will be dependently arising, depending on cause and conditions, depending on the dependence arising of cause and effect.
제가 다 대중세도 말에 콜레베 제시 망보 다야 다 대중들라 윤리그 대중세 차시 대중세 도르그 대중세 대중들은 제시 망보 자야래
So dependent arising, there can be many ways of explaining dependent arising. There can be dependent arising of the cause and effect, dependent arising of depending on the parts, and dependent arising existing by mere labeling. So all these different ways to explain dependent arising.
맨날 주준 잠배 양그 건다데
For example, this statue of Jetsun Manjushri.
대중 성가래
So this statue is all the 3 kinds of dependent arising.
아니 세나데 Jetsun jambe yang kunda de gipcha, koran sabche ki gipcha le tene yang chong yoraba.
So this statue is all the three kinds of dependent arisings. First of all, because this statue arises depending on its substance, like the different materials that were used in order to create that. So it arises depending on the causes.
아니 센데 kunda de sabche ki gipcha mene kunda de chong mar kunda de sabche ki gipcha tene kunda de chong deraba.
Because if we didn't have the substance that creates the statue, we will not have the statue. So the statue arises depending on this substance which created.
안 다나 이 jetsun jambe kunda se de malata shahi mangbo jetsun jambe yang ke chak dang e dang re zhe dang ane de xiao dang ane kuzuk dang de zama shahi mangbo choba tene kunda chak do.
And in the same way, the statue of Manjushri is made out of parts. So there is the head and the hands, the sword, the scriptures, the legs, the holy feet of Manjushri, and so forth. So all of these things, they are the different parts of Manjushri.
얘가 shahi mangbo choba tene kunda chak do ma to shahi mangbo choba ma hi gar se do do ma se kunda se ma do.
So the statue is coming to exist depending on a collection of many parts coming together. And it is not like the statue can exist without being a combination of parts.
제단 jetsun jambe yang kudi gar se gyul tene chong yewa song zang.
So since the holy body of Manjushri comes depending on causes,
ane gar se sona yin him tene chong him tene chong koran koran rang jing jiwa mar ba.
that's why it arises depending on other conditions. Because it arises depending on other conditions, it is not the case that the statue of Manjushri exists in and of itself, does it?
아나 이 jetsun jambe yang kunda tene shahi mangbo choba tene chong yewa song zang ane shahi to ne chong yewa shahi to ne chong yewa song koran koran rang jing jiwa mar ba.
And in the same way, since the statue of the holy body of Manjushri comes to exist depending on many parts, so the way the statue exists is by depending on the parts. And so we cannot say that the statue exists in and of itself, can we?
tene ba song jetsun jambe yang kunda ta gyul tene chong yewa song yin de den jong. shahi mangbo choba tene chong yewa song shahi ge den jong yin xia song.
And so the statue of the holy body of Manjushri, it comes to exist depending on causes, and in this way it is a dependent arising of causes. And also the statue of the holy body of Manjushri, it comes to exist depending on parts, and in this way it is a dependent arising depending on parts.
아 되네 가르세 손나 주준 잠배 양 일단 되네 군다 지금 되네 군다 될 맹카르다가 세디 주준 잠배 양 군다 스파르타 히아르 마도식 맹파르 마타나 아니 주준 잠배 양 군다 차트 바로.
And then we also have to ask ourselves, what kind of name shall we give to the statue, the holy of Manjushri? And we decide, and we say, oh, we will call it Manjushri. And in this way, also the statue of Manjushri comes to exist.
제당 차나 리드남 땡케 안에 군도 서버 이 땡케 되네 제 다당 로버지 옛나서서 땡케 안차 연발 레방 보트 남 땡케 아 계신들이 상계적 아니 주준 잠배 양 군다 다 히아르 마도식 아니 디 가르세서나 디 다히아르 마도식 되네 맹마타나 양 주준 잠배 양 군다 차 마라.
And so it will be a statue that holds the sword in the right hand, and also having the scriptures, holding the scriptures in the left hand, having like a yellow or orange color. So all of these things coming together, we will label as a statue of Manjushri. We will not say that Manjushri exists from its own side, right?
세당 너는 제준 잠배 양가지 내 제준 잠배 양 군다에서 맹마타나 양 잠배 군다 착이요 말이 다가는 이 차히 망고 맞죠나 제준 잠배 양 군다 착이요 말이 열레티는 맞죠나 제준 잠배 군다 착이요 말이 제단다 되네 봐서는데 열레티는 종 차히라도네 종 맹다 또베 따바된 저거요 봐서 땡종을 땡종이 봐서는 다 랑싱이요 말이 스티김스들
So Manjushri is a statue of Manjushri. It comes to exist depending on many causes and conditions that come together. Manjushri is a statue is coming to exist depending on the different parts, and coming to exist depending on causes and conditions. And since Manjushri comes to exist depending on parts and causes conditions that come together, since Manjushri does not exist in and of itself, that's why we say that the statue of Manjushri is dependent arising.
어다 되네 봐서다 열대는 정부에 와서다 코랑코랑 랑싱 좀 기와 말봐 안에 자신만 못 쳐왔던 저기에 와서다 랑싱 접어 말봐 근데 맹도 또 따왔던 저기에 와서다 랑싱 접어 말봐.
So since it comes to exist depending on causes, it is not inherently existing, right? And since it comes to exist also depending on parts, so it's not inherently existing, right? And also since it comes to exist depending on like a name and concept, so it's not inherently existing, is it?
가이세네 랑 코랑코랑 랑싱 요나 열대는 정과야 말봐 랑시 요나 자신 정과야 말봐 랑싱 접어 요서나 맹도 또 따와 메봐.
Because if it were to exist inherently, there would be no need for parts. There would be no need for causes. If it were to exist inherently, there would be no need for parts. If it were to exist inherently, there would be no need for name or concept to label. If it would just exist from inside.
가이세네 랑싱 요바다 땡종이 기발해.
Because to exist inherently and to be dependently arising are mutually exclusive.
랑종 요 땡종 많이 거래. 땡종 있는 랑싱 매 그래.
If it is inherently existing, it's necessarily not dependently arising. And if it is dependently arising, it's necessarily not inherently existed.
제가 드레 봐서도 쇼창마 땡종이 봐서도 쇼창마 랑싱 미스 김스테레.
And so since all phenomena are dependent arising, that's why all phenomena are not inherently existing.
제 드레 봐서도 같이 땡종만 이외 충가 요바 많이 넣어. 대체 동보만 이외 충가 요바 많이 넣어. 땡징 저번 정원 같은 데 동반 이해 되지. 땡다와데 되니 이메람 이너스테레.
And that's why there is not a single phenomenon which is not dependent arising. And therefore, there is not a single phenomenon which is not empty. That which is dependent relate origination is explained to be emptiness. That emptiness reflects dependent designation. This indeed is the middle way.
어다 드레 봐서도 다 너는 윤리 땡종이나 땡종이 비캡 아니 자기 땡종이나 땡종이 비캡 민캬 따위장 땡종이나 땡종이 비캡 땡종이 뜻성가 인거야 말이야. 성가 이나 되게 강야로만 이나 되게 강지다 가르 땡종이나 다 땡종이 비캡래.
And so if it is the arising depending on causes, it's necessarily dependent arising. If it arises depending on its parts, it's necessarily dependently arising. If it arises depending on being labeled, so it's necessarily, like if it comes to exist by being labeled, so it's necessarily dependent arising. So if it's one of these three, it's necessarily dependent arising.
어다 드레 봐서도 다 뭐 참만네 아니 윤리 땡종이야래 자기 땡종이야래 민캬 따위장 땡종이야래 딱 봐서 열대는 좀 많이 봐서도 딱 봐서 윤리 땡종 말해 자기 땡종이래 민캬 따위장 땡종이래 근데 봐서도 너는 쇼창마데 땡종이래 스테레.
So all the sins are dependent arising. The sins are dependent arising because they arise depending on their causes, they arise depending on their parts, and they arise depending on name and concept. And then also permanent phenomena are also dependent arising. Permanent phenomena are dependent arising because they arise depending on their parts and because they arise depending on a name and concept. So whether they fulfill all the three dependent arisings or only two dependent arisings, in any way, all phenomena are dependent arising.
어다 드레 봐서도 다 땡종 써야 돼. 윤리 땡종나 때네 안에 체디 디시 간지 적은도. 윤리 땡종나 때네 양기바 첨발라서 데키 간지 적은도. 윤리 땡종나 때네 하와 템시 캠페 컴바트 간지 적은도. 다가나기 차시 땡종나 때네 탐시 캠페 컴바 간지 적은도. 다가나기 민캬다요 장 땡종 때네 탐시 캠페 컴바 간지 적은도. 어다 데시 르바키 피나요.
And then there is gradual explanations relating on dependent arising. How can we utilize the understanding of dependent arising in order to experience happiness in this life? How can we utilize the understanding of dependent arising in order to experience happiness of the future life, attaining a state of rebirth as a human or a deity? How can we use the understanding of dependent arising in order to attain the state of liberation, the freedom of all suffering, from all suffering? And how can we use the understanding of dependent arising in order to attain the state of Buddhahood, the complete state of Buddhahood? So there are gradual explanations using dependent arising.
다들 윤리 된종 윤리 된종을 때네 센터를 대치가를 용 르당 퀄리티스 휴나.
So today, if I speak a little bit of how to attain happiness, the happiness of this life, by relying on the dependent arising of cause and effect.
한간저 문제들 안에 세 가지는 로자마다 도기요 말해.
So in this life, no matter how long we will stay, we will not be able to stay for more than 100 years.
한간저 정말 대치 거래 도면 거야 말해.
And we all wish for happiness, and we all do not wish for suffering.
다 들에 봐서 다 대치 가를 때는 연구 열세나.
So what does happiness come like? What is the dependent causes of happiness? What does happiness depends on?
대치 세야의 결정의 용도가 아스리야.
So what we call happiness is coming depending on causes.
제상 소소 대치 가운데 용색이 기토서라 계신 못자 그래. 아스리야.
And since happiness comes depending on causes, that's why we need to consider the causes of our happiness. What is the origin of our happiness as important.
한간저 천리가 대치돼.
For example, as the happiness of this life,
소소 남을 때는 소소 센터 대치 연구에 와서자.
since the happiness of this life is coming depending on one's family,
다 제가 남을 때서 다 제바시 그래. 아스리야.
that's why we need to have caring, compassion to our family.
너무 찍찍라 소신, 찍찍라 삼시, 찍찍라 이시, 찍찍라 제바 거래스 잠세.
We need to have a patience to one another in our family. We need to have understanding to one another in the family. We need to care for one another in the family, and we need to understand one another in the family.
아르치스에서는 소소 대기자만 남을 때는 용도 아스.
And why? Because our happiness is dependent on one another in our family.
다가 나이 소소 즉 파마당, 분시당, 유무당, 김치당, 두 상마를 잠세. 뭐 깨그레스 상마.
And in the same way, also for our parents and our families, and for our neighbors and for our relatives. So we all need loving kindness, compassion, love.
가르치는 세서는
And why?
오란조 시대 맞다.
Not for their sake,
만주치 소소치.
but for our sake, for one's own sake.
소소 그 대기자마다 코서 때는 용거 소소 그 명당, 년자당, 토당, 고사당, 왕타당, 노주당, 사야당, 내 사야당, 대사당 다 너는 소소 고야 자마 코서 때는 중국에 와서자 소소다 항상 까진 신바인 바서자 아니 민거를 코서다 장바당 세베로 깨그레스데 초치그레.
So because one's own happiness, because one's own name and fame, one's own position, or one's own like food and clothing and house, objects of enjoyment, objects of enjoyment. So since all of these things they come depending on others, that's why we need to have love and caring for others.
제가 소소 고야 자마 소소 그 대기자마 소소를 고야 자마 코서 때는 중국에 와서자 아니 소소 대기기 정모 좀 짜가 코서 통도에 와서자 대기 강한테 정세게 소소를 배 대기 강한테 정세게 심치도서라 샤바고리 세바고리 예스.
So since one's happiness and one's possessions, one's like everything that one needs, everything that one needs comes depending on others. That's why one needs to develop love and caring for others.
다가나 힌카르세서는 소소 그 레가 레산다 지금 레가 레세게 레용적이나야 소소 그즉 명당 년자당 토당 고사당 다가나 힌카르세서는 즉 배샤당 다 소소 고약상마다 레고들 때는 요구에 와서자 아니 그서 백가진 첨바인 바서자 아니 소소 대기 가운데 정색 심시도서야 잠바당 세바 같이 그래서
Leka chesalaya.
그래서 안에 소소 배샤 가는 연구열에 아니 맹 가는 연구열에 로종 가는 연구열에 소소 대기 상마 가는 연구열 내가 지바 때는 연구 내가 지사 때는 연구라 내가 지사 때는 소소 가르세서는 튼기 안에 즉 응담 다 소소 고약 상마들 내가 지사 때는 연구에 와서자 다 대강의 용색 안에 레고에서 그 심진 서서야 배 참바당 세바치야 소소 사선난다시야 해선계야 등이가 되고 있대.
So the same also applies for one's workplace. So since the work that we have is something that allows us to develop, like to gain money, to save money, and also it allows us to get education, and it allows us to gain name and fame, and to have like good position and influence and power, so forth. So since it is the work that the workplace is also depending on that, we attain all of this. So also to the beings in our workplace, we need to have this kind of love and caring. that's all.
아니 다가나 다가나 그 거래와 안에서 맨날 빠바 아마데 걔랑 나무 참에 걔랑을 빼 항상 약보 지거나 그소를 그게 지거를 제 말에 하여튼 희심치 gem바 참에 소소를 펜토단 지거요 안에 소소 그게 지거 빼 계신 거라 같아서 아마 펜토단 그게 지거야.
So for example, since our father and mother are extremely kind to us, so this is the reason why we need to have respect to our father and mother, and to have love and caring. And in the same way, all sentient beings, since all sentient beings are extremely kind to us in many ways, that's why we need to have love and compassion and respect to all sentient beings.
제가 만족 그배 만족 그 사야당 통야당 대사당 내당 예라당 톱당 고사당 왕타당 농주당 로종당 단 돈은 만족 뭐야 참마 아니 셈셈된 정부에 와서자 소소 고야 특히 참마치 강도 정색 셈셈돼서 만족 네바데 세바치 네바데 잡아치 아 펜도치 어다 점색으로도 고리스테.
So the reasoning that is given here is that since we get everything that we wish for, everything that we need, we get depending on others. We get from others. We get the food and the clothing. We get the possessions, the house. We get our name and our reputation. We get our position. We get money. We get education. So everything that we need, all the happiness and all the cause of happiness that we need, since we get it all from others, that's why it's extremely important to have love and respect for others, for all sentient beings.
근데 봐서 따와 된 중세는 도나 나주 대기 참아 셈셈 희는 때니 중국에 와서 된 중. 나주 대기 참아 셈셈 희는 때니 중국에 와서 된 중, 따와 된 중세 따디 중국에 와서 안에 대기 강의 중에 셈셈도 파 저바 체험 해 봐서는 대기 소소 대기 강의 중에 셈셈도 안에 장바다 닝지 로기게 노바치 디어 마스터레.
So therefore, since all of our happiness comes from others, so our happiness is dependently arising. And since our happiness is dependent on others, that's why it's very important not to harm the origin of our happiness. So this is non-harming, second part, not harming.
나주 대기 참아 셈셈 희는 때니 중국에 와서
Since all of our happiness comes in dependence on other sentient beings,
나주 대기 참아 된 중래.
the entirety of our happiness is dependently arising.
아이세나 셈셈 희는 때니 나주 대기 참아 중국도 가.
Because depending on other sentient beings, our entire happiness is arising, right?
제가 나주 대기 참아 셈셈 희는 때니 중국에 와서 된 중세 따따와 된 중세.
So since the entirety of our happiness arises depending on other sentient beings, it is dependent arising. This is the view of dependent arising.
아, 내가 때는 저파 체험해 봤어요. 딱 가르치 잠시 냠내 가르치 그랬잖아.
And then depending on that, also the conduct of not harming. So how should we practice the conduct of not harming, depending on that?
따따와 된 중에 봐서도 아니 저파 체험해 봐. 냠내 시야 항상 내려고 시작했다.
So once the view of dependent arising is there, the practice of not harming becomes extremely simple.
가이세는 아주 대기 잠마 셈셈 희는 때는 중국이요나 아니 아주 셈셈 잠마를 잠바단 이제 거야 항상 내려고 시작할 가이세는 항상 가르쳐 버려.
Because if we realize that the entirety of our happiness is coming depending on others, then we also realize that it's extremely important to be kind to others, not to harm them, because others are very kind to ourselves.
간데세.
Chik no di mantak chunso. Natso deki tsama shenta latene chungi ores hakosona. Ani
아주 대기 잠마
if like all our happiness arises depending on other sentient beings. Since all of our happiness arises by depending on other sentient beings, that's why it becomes very easy to develop love and compassion to other sentient beings. Because all sentient beings are extremely kind to us, right? Because everything we wish for, which is all the happiness, is coming depending on others, right? So since each and every part of our happiness comes depending on others, that's why we definitely need to have love to others. That's why we definitely need to have respect and caring for others. Since the entirety of our happiness is coming by depending on other sentient beings, all sentient beings are extremely kind to us. Since all sentient beings are extremely kind to us, that's why to practice the perfection of generosity that's why to practice the
that's very 말해서 난주 대기장마 샘신 때는 정부여와 송장 사카상 히와 디페기여마 단다 카투히 그래 난주 대기장마 샘신 때는 용부여와 송장 안에 샘신장마 가서 가진침벌에 가진침벌 이바 송장 안에 샘신 담시 난주 강도 깨진침에 샘신 도적 시는 난주 짐바타야 레라워래 안에 배처럼 소야 레라워래 코소시는 난주 짐바탄거 코소시는 난주 소바공거 코소시는 난주 존주장거 코소시는 난주 something 공거 코소시는 난주 히라 공거 간세나 그래서 참아 가서 가진침벌에도 왔대.
So since all sentient beings are extremely kind to us, that's why for the sake of all sentient beings, we need to develop generosity. Since all sentient beings are extremely kind to us, that's why for the sake of all sentient beings, we need to practice the perfection of morality. Since all sentient beings are extremely kind to us, that's why for the sake of all sentient beings, we need to practice the perfection of patience. Since all sentient beings are extremely kind to us, that's why for the sake of all sentient beings, we need to practice the perfection of joyous effort. And since all sentient beings are extremely kind to us, that's why for the sake of all sentient beings, we need to practice the perfection of mental stability. And since all sentient beings are extremely kind to us, that's why for the sake of all sentient beings, we need to develop the perfection of patience, of wisdom. So if we don't attain happiness depending on others, then to develop love, compassion, bodhicitta, and wisdom of selflessness for the sake of others, that will become difficult, right?
내기 자마 코소 때는 정부여와 성자 나도 내기 자마 땡종래 가르 땡 정선 샘신 힘 때는 용부 내기 자마 용부여와 성자 내기 강한테 용백 샘체도 살아 아니 자바 공부 인제 공부 제바 공부를 에네 코소 펜도 체그래서 이 인데 있다 남초다 내비 히랍단 되건 용도
but since all of our happiness comes by depending on others, that's why it makes sense to develop love for others. That's why it makes sense to develop compassion for others. That's why it makes sense to develop wisdom for the sake of others, because all of our happiness comes depending on others. So definitely we should develop love, compassion, wisdom in relation to others.
어다 초치네 가래 샘신 장마 소소 파마치 뇽나래 가리체 샘신 담제 소소 가리체 뭐 이나래 미나래 강달 샘신 장마 라나 이 대반도 왔다 동네 먹고 와 찍바래 근데 봐 대반 거 왔었다 샘신 장마 대지 삼당 그래 동네 먹고 왔었다 샘신 장마 노바치 지어마스테.
And then on the other hand, whether all sentient beings are greatly kind to us or not, whether all sentient beings have been our parents or not, in any way, just like oneself, all sentient beings wish for happiness. And since just like oneself, all sentient beings wish for happiness, that's why we should, in the same way that when another person benefits us, we are happy. That's why we should benefit other sentient beings. And in the same way that when another harms us, we suffer. That's why we should not harm other sentient beings.
아니 초진의 싸움 따한다. 샘시 상마 팔이 약고지는 설 약고지기를 팔 도자친 팔 넘어긴 선 넘어기기라.
And on another hand, think about all sentient beings. If one is harming the other, so the other will harm oneself. And if one is benefiting the other, so the other will benefit oneself, right?
대단 소소를 너 소소를 팬통게 짱짱 좋은 너바긴게 매는 삼나 팔을 샘시 상마 팬도시야 계신 거래.
And so, if one wishes for others to only benefit oneself and never to harm oneself, so one should always benefit the others.
대대에 봐서는 나도 대기 상마 샘시 때니 정규요가 손자
Because since all of our happiness comes by depending on other sentient beings,
샘시 상마 가리신 거래.
that's why all sentient beings are extremely kind.
가리신 거 이봐 손자
Because all sentient beings are greatly kind.
아니 그래서 너바기기요 말 세바시기요 말 저바서 봤을 때
Because all sentient beings are greatly kind, that's why I should not harm other sentient beings. That's why I should only benefit a sentient beings. This is the conduct of not harming.
너는 나도 대기 상마 샘시 희는 때니 중과 이봐서 땡중 세들이다.
And so, in short, since all of our happiness comes by relying, depending on others, that's why it is dependently arising. And this is the view of dependent arising.
나도 대기 상마 샘시 희는 때니 중구요가 손자 아니 나도 대기 가운데 정세가 샘시 때서라 노파치기요 말에 세리다데 저바서 매 봤을 때
And then, since all of our happiness comes depending on others, that's why we should not harm the origin of our happiness. And this is the conduct of not harming.
대단 소소를 펜토신께 노파치는 오빠를 하대.
So if someone harms that which benefits oneself, that will be stupid, wouldn't it?
소소를 펜토신께 때라 잠바단 세와 끼고야 되다고 남주당 히랍 그 임젠도가.
But if one is protecting with love and compassion that which benefits oneself, so that will be intelligent, wise thing to do.
아니 쇼진이 팔 펜토신은 설 펜토신을 팔 노파킨 설 노파키기라.
And on one hand, if one benefits the other will benefit oneself, right? And if one harms the other will harm oneself, right?
햄비드브 대화 정도다. 노비드 동의 정도와.
The result of benefit is happiness, and the result of harm is suffering, right?
옛날 소설 메이킹 펜토신 소설 대기 용어다. 소설 메이킹 노파치는 소설 동의 정도와.
For example, if someone benefits oneself, one is happy, and if another harms oneself, one is suffering, right?
다들 나이 팔sem시나 펜토신은 소설 대기 용어를 팔sem시 노파킨 소설 동의 용어라.
And in the same way, if one is benefiting other sentient beings, one will experience happiness, right? And if one harms other sentient beings, one will experience suffering, right?
제가 먼저 상마 대반도와 동의문도 직발해와.
And we are all the same in wishing for happiness. We are all the same in not wishing for suffering, aren't we?
근데 연바선다 따와 땡종세디 소소 대기 상마 희엔텐 중국에서 따와 견제기 땡종. 다들 땐 샘시 희엔 노파치기요 말에서는 다들 세바 쳐바 쳐야매 바세 견제기 땡종난 데베겠다. 따와 땡종 쳐바 쳐야매 텐데 제ек치요.
And so the view of dependent arising is the sin that our happiness. Rinpoche, selpochi komason.
아니 세바 마고는 결기요 말아. 녀데 거라.
Chesan.
가이서서나 땡종 쓰미요 난다 견제기 땡종나 때네.
From within the three dependent arisings, if we relying on the first dependent arising of cause and effect,
천디기 대기간에 좋단다.
so this is how we accomplish happiness in this life. With
천디기 대기장만 깨버 현된 정도가 아서야.
The happiness of this life is arising depending on other beings.
천디기 세군님만 롱쇼 저장마데 깨버 현된 정도가 성장.
Since the food, clothing, possessions, and house of this life are arising by depending on other people.
That's
why it is dependent arising. This is the view of dependent arising, right? And then all of the beings which are the origin of happiness of oneself. So all of beings which are the origin of happiness of oneself. So one should not harm the origin of happiness of oneself. And this is the view, the conduct of not harming. And not only not harming, but with a mind which is filled with love and caring, benefiting all sentient beings. Because loving kindness is the cause of happiness, right? And since depending on loving kindness, happiness arises. So the conduct is of not causing harm. So today I'll stop at this point, and tomorrow I'll keep going from this point slowly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. Thank you, Venla.
Thank you.